Well, let's hold. Is it okay if they hold your questions till the end?
Yeah, that'd be best.
Yeah,
and I'm going
okay.
to make sure we have time to have
Perfect.
Q&A.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. Let me know when the live stream's up. Yes. So on our startups page, it's facebook.com/group/TWI startups. That's our startups group. And is this okay? It sounds like it's cutting in and out. You can tell me. You can hear me okay. Yeah. Great. The video will live on that page. So if you want to go back and watch anything there, you'll be able to see the live stream there. Yep. /groups/TWI startups. So if you search by startups, it should come up too. If you're not in the group already, you just have to ask to join and we'll accept you, obviously.
I think there's a link on the top of the Founder University webpage too. Just go right to that and bam.
But that's the video will live there for a while. So if you want to go back and watch the pitches and the feedback from the pitches, you'll be able to see and all the talks, you'll be able to see them there. Okay, great. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Sunny Mayuba. He is with Waiter. He'll tell you all about that. He actually went through Jason's incubator. And is a great success and an awesome speaker. So please, round of applause for Sunny.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. So just speak into this mic and we're good? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Founder University. Good to see all your smiling faces. And I'm happy and humbled to be here. Like Jackie said, my name is Sunny Mayuba. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Waiter. And if you want to know more about what we do and all about Waiter, you can go to waiterapp.com. It's Waiter with no E, waiterapp.com. Check it out. But the goal for today is we're going to talk about how to build an effective marketing team. And before we kind of get into that, I want to kind of tell you why I'm here and how I got here. And really it has to do with this right here, I guess, up here. You guys have these big screens. These are nice screens, Jason. Really good. Which is what we all have in common, which is we love building things. And I've been building things my whole life. So my first startup was at 14. I had a T-shirt manufacturing company, like every young startup rocker kid, and it failed. I started a skimboard company because I'm from Sacramento, California. Failed. Started a rock band. Yes, that's me, and you can laugh out loud. I don't care. Did okay, but failed. I started another band because I really wanted to be a rock star. It failed. Started a snowboard magazine. It succeeded. Did really well. Started a record label. It failed. I started an ad agency. Started to do good, but it failed. I started a really good social network in 2006. Like Facebook had 3 million members. It was going to be huge, but it failed. So I started a restaurant company, did and is still doing remarkably well. Got involved in a koozie company. It was like my first capital investment. I invested in this. It failed. Started a commercial real estate company. It's doing really well. And then I started this mobile app called Requested, and that's where I met Jackie and Jason Calacanis. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. So I had this idea that everyone should be able to name their own price at restaurants and bars. So kind of like Priceline for restaurants. Kind of a novel idea, right? If it's slow on a Tuesday, pay a little less. If it's busy on a Friday, maybe you can pay a little more to grab a table and skip the wait, right? Kind of a neat idea. A lot of people thought it was a really good idea. So me and my co-founders built this cool prototype. We raised a friends and family round, probably like a lot of you. Anybody raised money yet? So yeah, about half of you guys have already, or a little more than half raised money. Yeah, so we raised our first round of money, quit our jobs, started working on this, and this is 2014, by the way, not too long ago. And then that's when I met Jason Calacanis, and we got into Launch Incubator, batch number 1, totally changed our lives. Little plug for Launch, it was really great. And then, Jason brought in Launch Fund, AngelList, and Social Capital Partnership, so just the elite of investors in this really great group. And we launched in 2015 on stage at the Launch Festival in front of like 14,000 people. It was pretty amazing. And I came off that and I was like, we're the next Airbnb. How does it feel to meet a billionaire? It's going to happen for sure. I guarantee it. And people were offering us money. We're like, we don't need your money because we're the next Airbnb. We're huge. Yeah, huge mistake. So you know where this story's going. So we launched in March 2015. And it was neat, novel idea. People were downloading it, as you can see, and we picked up a couple thousand users, and we're making a little bit of money because we were, you booked this reservation, and your credit card was tied, and it was all seamless payment. So we were making money out of the gate. The problem we started to see was that really, for every 100 people that were coming into Requested and wanted to use it, only about 10% were converting on the bottom of the funnel, which sounds pretty good, and at scale it would be good, but the number was pretty darn low. So it wasn't working. It wasn't picking up traction. It wasn't picking up steam. And so we did pivot number one. We kind of said, hey, this isn't working. That's okay. Let's try something different. And we asked our customers, what do you want? And on both sides, the restaurants and the diners, they both wanted the same thing. So we kind of did more of a hotel tonight for restaurants, where we built a little kind of algorithm where the restaurants could put in deals based upon time and premiums based upon time, and diners could just come in, get it, and seamlessly pay. And that picked up a little better, but not really all too great. Oops. And so we pivoted to another model. We were, again, listening to the public. And what happened was people thought our idea was so neat. A lot of media companies around the nation were asking us if they could license or launch Requested in their markets. And at first we said no, because remember, we were the next Airbnb. And now we were like, yes, please, let's do it. Let's rock and roll. So we ended up signing that. We built a licensing model, built a whole contract and a business model around that, and rev share and all this really neat stuff, like in a month. Plus, all my co-founders built this whole engineering stack in order to white label it in like 6 weeks. It was phenomenal. And we launched our first one. And it did pretty good too. So in January 2017, this all happened, and we were kind of like where a lot of founders get to, where you're kind of like, okay, we got to make this work. So, or give up, because it's like you're nearing the end, right? You know what I'm saying? So I was like, it's okay. We're going to try and raise more money. Picked up a little bit more money. Started talking to potential acquirers, because we had a great team with a great product and a little bit of action going on. Nurture this licensing model, which was starting to pick up steam. And then, of course, still trying to make the whole thing work. Like maybe it'll break through, right? It was a pretty crazy time. And really the message I want to say to all you founders is like perseverance, man. Just like stay with it, even when it's like the darkest and craziest. So in 2016, because of the licensing model, I found myself in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a place I'd never been to. I've been to 6 or 7 continents. I'd never been to the state of Louisiana. And so we were down there working with our licensing partner, and I ran into this company called Waiter. And Waiter was doing online ordering and food delivery, something y'all from California, anybody, most people from California? So the people from California know it's been here for a long time. And I was like, man, people are still launching food delivery? This is crazy. And they were in just a small handful of markets, 4 markets. But their customers loved them. They already had iPads in the restaurants. And so I had reached out to Waiter and said, hey, why don't we work together, because we're coming in and we're dine-in and your delivery. And it ended up being a really great bond, and Waiter ended up acquiring our company, and we joined the journey with Waiter, which was pretty cool. And like I said, 2016, it was just a few people, just 4 markets, and really trying to get it all going, right? And so that was now over 2 years ago, which is kind of crazy. So what happens in 2018? I'm going to tell you all about that, but that's really my journey. I'll tell you what happens and where we're at with Waiter. But that's really how I wanted to set up, and how I kind of came to be able to think like a CMO. Like you, I'm a founder, and I also have my superpowers. They're mostly in the marketing side, and everyone has their superpowers. But really thinking like a CMO is a little bit different than just marketing as a startup founder. And so I'm going to share what I've learned about it through the practice of all my failures you all saw and the few successes I've had, and mostly my time at Waiter, which has been really great. So I've got, let's see here, 16 steps to help you organize and structure your marketing team to get results. Some of these are going to be pretty pedestrian, but some of them are a little high level, and hopefully you get something out of it. And I just tried to put them in easy, simple steps so you can follow, and then we'll have Q&A and we can talk about your specific companies. So when I came into Waiter, there was a little small marketing team there that was really, really talented and really, really good. But we didn't really have an org structure. And we weren't really thinking about the marketing team and division as where we wanted it to be in our dream, right? So the first thing I did is like, let's put together a dream org structure for marketing, not your company org structure, but what would the marketing org structure look like today, in the future, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Like, what would you dream of? Like, build all those pillars and all these positions that you probably could not even hire for 3 years, but what would it look like? Build that. And then start to plug your people into some of those pieces. And then as you grow and the business gets more traction, you'll find yourself growing your marketing team tremendously. So first thing I did was like build a little dream org. And then the second thing that was really cool, kind of, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months in. So when I got to Waiter, it was all about, we were an app. We were mobile first, no website even. We have a website now, but it was just mobile. And so the North Star metric, as you can imagine, was let's get new installs, because new installs mean new customers, right? So that was like sort of our biggest thing we thought about in marketing was let's move rock. The only rock we wanted to move was let's get the install. But really, I started thinking about, well, what are the big rocks we really want to move on the marketing side? And I came up with four. One was increase order frequency from X to Y. And these are just for us because we're, again, food delivery and food carry out. So you have to apply this to yourself. But one was about frequency. We already had customers at Waiter. So, and you probably, even if you're small, like requested, you've got customers. So the first rock that I focused on was how do we increase frequency for existing people? And then how do we truncate that time from first time order? So a lot of times people install, but how long does it take them to make their first purchase, right? Amazon pours all over this all the time. So how do we decrease that time? So when they go from awareness to install to that first purchase, how do we get that time nice and small? That was rock number 2. And then, of course, rock number 3 was just let's get new people. So let's get, this is kind of top of the funnel. Let's get new people to install the app. That was rock number 3. And then what's really interesting early on was let's fix our driver efficiency. So for our business, this is the metaphor here is kind of cool. So the first 3 are very obvious marketing metrics, right? Getting new users to the system. The fourth one is really an operations metric if you think about it. But I know that if driver efficiency gets better, our business gets better as a whole, which means I have more budget for marketing, which means I'm going to get more people. So sometimes it's good to have this sort of lofty one that you're going like your company's thinking, how can I affect that metric? That's not my lane or not my sandbox. And try to think about how marketing can affect a metric that's very important to your company. Turns out driver efficiency is literally kind of the pinnacle of our company. And all the food delivery and just delivery people, like it's really, really critical. The more efficient that is, the more profitable a company is. So we thought about that, and we do our best to try to mess with that. So step 3 is your team, of course. So you've kind of got your dream org, you got your 4 big rocks, or it could be 1, it could be 17, whatever. Pick some rocks you want to move, and then your team. So you may have no team if you're a brand new startup, or you may be walking into a team that's existing. Either way, think about your team and what their superpowers are, and try to get them to plug into that org, maybe in multiple hats, especially if the companies are kind of young. Get them to do multiple divisions of that. And what you'll find is people change over time, I've noticed in marketing. Like it's rare you're going to get somebody who is just good at performance and only wants to do performance for the rest of their life, or just does content and can't inform creative or inform strategic, right? So, just try to plug in your team and work with your team and build your team, because your team is really everything. You're going to have a million tools, but it's all about your team. It's so critical in a marketing division. It's like a startup within a startup. And then another kind of cool thing, again, a little elementary, but take the time and do a retreat. We've done this 3 times now at Waiter, which seems like a little amount, but it's actually a lot. And this is where we get like the real work done. It's our team, because there's so much to do, obviously, on the marketing side, because everybody's like, marketing, where's the customers? Get us customers. But sometimes you have to stop and step back and reevaluate everything you're doing. So do a retreat. It's like one of the best things you can do. The first one we did was 2 days, like 2 full, solid, long days, phones off, no devices, locked in a room at this time, food delivered in, obviously, and no one leaves until, get your kids or whatever you've got to deal with, get it away, because you're not going to be reachable. And it's in this world of hyperconnectivity and freaking attention deficit, right? You'll get really great work out of your retreat. And there's a lot of ways, and there's a million books and blogs about how to do an effective retreat. I think I put a few of the ones I like. So the first is, what outcome do you want? Like, is it you're building a marketing plan? Are you building your strategy for the next year? Are you trying to reassess your team? Are you, is it new creative? Just what outcome do you want? And then, get personal. Even if your company kind of knows each other, you might be like, hey, we all know each other. We've been working on this for 2 years, and it's crazy. Kind of stop right there and, do a professional and personal get to know me. You'll be surprised at people you've worked with for 2 or 3 years, and you put them in this setting with this type of mechanism, how awesome and new things you'll learn about people. Then go into a deep dive about devices and roles. I think this is really, really important. You've got to constantly reassess your marketing team around, are you in the right role? What devices are you using to drive user acquisition and grow the company? And do you have the right devices? Are we doing the right things? Really critical. Because a lot of times you'll find good people are working away and they're not really where they should be. And they know it, they're just not telling you. Talk about perceptions of your company. This is kind of an interesting one that a lot of companies don't do, but take the time and like try to dig into what you believe how other people perceive your company. What it does, it helps expose your weaknesses, which of course you want to attack, right? And then do a creative and strategic brain dump. This is kind of my favorite, and I have to give credit to my senior marketing director, Jeff Belante. He came up with this idea. It's pretty cool. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So for us, we were kind of thinking about, well, what is a marketing team really? It's people, product, execution, media, and measurement, right? You cannot think of anything that doesn't fit into one of those buckets. You literally can't. And so what we did is we put those words up. You can see those little white sheets that say those words, people, product, execution, media, and measurement, up on this board in this retreat room we were in, room like this. We put them all up. And we started the day when we were fresh with a bunch of like a massive stack of Post-it notes and a bunch of pens. And we just riffed. And I'm not talking about, let's create the next Dollar Shave Club video. I mean, let's go psychologically deep, super deep on any idea that you can dream up to grow Waiter's business, anything. And so we were riffing together, like, verbally. But the reason for the Post-it notes, this is kind of the critical pieces, even with people that are close as a team, some people will dominate, guilty, and some people will get quiet. So with Post-it notes, you can just write an idea and stick it up and never talk about it in the brainstorming session. That's what makes it work. Brainstorming technically doesn't work, right? But in this scenario with Post-its, it works really well. And what you're seeing there is a picture. We were stoked. This created like more devices and mechanisms than you could ever dream of, most of which we even acted on, believe it or not. Then, like I said, number 5, have a North Star metrics. So marketing is a weird one, right? Because as you start to grow, there are, I'm going to say, hundreds of metrics you can measure. Well, there's probably thousands, but hundreds that your CEO is going to say, what's going on with this? Like in a random meeting, they're going to say, hey, what's the basket ring on people in this market? And you're like, oh, I don't know. Let me look that up, right? I mean, there's just so many metrics that everybody wants to know in marketing. But the key is you got to decide what your North Star metric is. It's really key. And the way you do that is you try to figure out what can your team best affect and how does that best affect the business, right? So for each of your companies, we can talk about that a little bit. But a North Star metric is kind of crucial. It keeps the team aligned because there's so much to do in marketing, as you saw on this slide. Wait, where's that? As you see here, there's hundreds and hundreds of cool, tricky, fun, creative things we can all do. But if they don't ladder up to the North Star metric, then you shouldn't be doing them. Next is build a marketing channel stack, internal and external. I think I have a picture. Oh, yeah, cool. So I have kind of a picture. And look, this is simple. Google Sheets. By the way, there's not magic secret tools. Use the tools you have. But a channel stack is kind of crucial. Engineers know how to do this really well. A lot of marketers don't do this. So what you're seeing here, let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here is we kind of put together all the channels we had. By the way, this is from 2016, so it's old. But, all of our email, how we talk to people on email, all the social media channels we were in or maybe not in, notifications, video, PR, paid, and there's some other tabs. So basically, what stack are we using to communicate to people both externally, that's marketing, and internally? That's like another key, because remember, you're kind of the voice of the company internally as well. And then you can actually start to build out like your cadences on some of these things. Like you may want to do a Facebook post every other day, but maybe a consumer email is only once a week or whatever. Every company's a little different. But build a channel stack. And then next, a marketing roadmap. So out of all that stuff, the retreat, the brain dump, the get to know me, the channel stack, you can build a roadmap. And this is really cool. Again, this is thinking more like an engineering department than a traditional marketing department. So what you're seeing here is something really cool. So you're seeing a tactic. Those tactics all 100% came out of that Post-it note exercise. Who it's assigned to, what metric. Remember the 4 rocks we talked about? Well, one thing really important on your 4 rocks is you have to put a metric next to it. You can't just say increase customers. Well, increase customers, what? A percentage, a number? It's got to be a metric. So we put a real metric next to it, a timeline, a start date, and some notes. And we did this. You can see on the bottom here, we built this out for 3 quarters ahead. So we did this retreat. So out of 2 days, we came up with 9 months of activities. And I'll be honest, we never accomplished all these. But we moved the business forward in a major, major way. So build a roadmap. And there's a lot of tools on how to build a roadmap. We did good old Google Sheets, free and easy. Okay, now we're going like 1 inch above the ground. Login credentials, okay? If you're busy and you think this is, or if you're not busy, you think this is stupid. If you're busy, this is hecka smart right here. So build a little get a Google Doc with all of your social and all your channel stack and Slack, you're nodding your head, and put the login credentials where everybody can get them. A lot of marketing teams don't do this, and you're always getting emails in the middle of the night. What's the Instagram login? Somebody posted this. I don't know. So-and-so's on vacation. Put it there. Survey Monkey. I want to send a survey out. What's the login? I don't know. I thought you had it. Oh, that one dude who had it who quit. Oh, shit. Recover password. It's his email. It's gone. Yeah, it's funny, huh? Because it's true. 1 inch above the ground, one of the most important things right there. Make a login credentials little sheet. We have one. Don't hack it, please. All right, analytics. So we're all marketers, or even if you're just a CEO founder, you have to be the marketer. This is something that really my CEO helped me get better at, is analytics. As a marketer, it's really, and as a founder, you like to be really creative and instinctual. But you have to apply analytics to everything you do. It's really critical. And some things are just going to be for brand, right? You're going to do some things and you're going to justify and say, this is for brand and this is why we do it. But you've got to make sure that you have some sort of system for measuring analytics, or else you will not know where you're going. And you can't grow the business. And ultimately, you're trying to grow the business. So one of the things we used right away was Facebook Analytics. It's free. I mean, we're mobile, so it's kind of critical, but they have a web too. And it's so powerful, and it's free. It's really great. And, of course, you got so many people on Facebook, you can get insights into people. But however you need to do it for your company, dedicate yourself to getting analytics software and tools so you can study your business and report on it. That's really key. A marketing calendar and Google Docs. I might have a picture of this too. But, we were all doing things like content person was doing this, video person was doing that. Just hold your questions and we'll do Q&A for sure. You had all these different things that people were doing. And then I discovered, as a CMO, I was kind of like, wow, I don't have insight into what everyone's doing. And if the business does better or worse, I'm not totally sure what's affecting it, right? And I need to know. I have to know. So we started this central calendar. Again, it's 1 inch above the ground. It's simple as hell, but it's so critical. Now I can see we already have our table stakes of what we do on a daily basis. My team is just super, super busy and cranking. But every once in a while, we'll do something unique. Like last week, we had Drew Brees, this famous football dude, do a real delivery. We filmed it, and it went social and all that kind of stuff. It's a big deal. So that's an episodic event, and I need to know that's on the calendar. So when I look back 3 weeks and go, wow, why'd we get a bunch of traffic, or what, you can point to something, right? So kind of important. This is super simple. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but a competitive analysis sheet. I just put it up here because as founders and, as head marketers, you want to think you're the only jewel in the world, and it's not true. We all have competitors, and it's a good thing. So, it's kind of good to know what we did. The kind of key factor here, and kudos to my one of my performance guys, Pat Hardy. He built this, and it's like he broke it up by like all the features of our competitors. And I'm sure that we're living on Uber Eats is one too somewhere. So you can see kind of what you do and what they do, what's better, what's worse, what you think is better, what you think is worse, and so on. It's kind of a good thing to study and keep up to date because it's important to know. Okay, this is kind of a cool one. This didn't happen for about a year. But, I imagine most of us are in software, if not all of us, and you're going to have engineering asks. And as you grow, it's important to keep a close relationship with engineering, and hopefully someday you get an engineer on your team. But you're going to have engineering asks, and you're not always going to remember them. And engineers get really, really busy, and then sometimes they kind of get free, right? So if they come to you and say, hey, marketing needs some help, let's spur some growth, you better be ready. So start a little Google sheet that's like, man, I wish engineering would build us this. I wish they would build us something where we could do this, or build us this ability for landing pages or whatever. Have that stuff ready, and then just have regular meetings with engineering, and they'll help you. It's really good. Marketing plan templates, this is simple stuff. Everybody has marketing plans, and I'm sure all of y'all have done that before. But build some templates because it's important to build plans for other things inside your inside your company. So, for example, we have a whole different marketing template for our launches, the way we launch a market, as opposed to the way we grow a market. You see what I'm saying? So, I don't know. Again, we'll talk about your businesses, but you can't just do a one-size-fits-all in marketing anymore. It's not; those days are long gone. Budget trackers, really critical. We like to spend money in marketing. We love to spend cash. But you want to do budget trackers. For us, we're hyper local, so I've got over 200 cities now, right? And I've got to manage budgets around them, plus as a whole, plus deliver up. So budget track, again, as it relates to your company, really kind of an important thing. Funnel conversion rates. This is a neat one. I'm going to spend just a moment on this one. So again, when you start something, it's kind of easy to go, we started this company, and look, we got customers. So we started it, we're doing a bunch of stuff, we're throwing parties, we're doing ads, we're doing whatever, and now we got customers, and they're ordering food. Okay, so that's A and B. Kind of a funnel, but not really. But there's what they call a life cycle, right? There's a journey that the consumer goes upon that you need to be informed about. And then you also need to know the kind of key factor here is what those conversion rates are along that customer's journey. That's crucial because if you don't know that, you could be dying and you won't know. Or you could be growing really rapidly, and this is almost worse. You could be growing really rapidly and you're not ready. And then you had a shot and you didn't deliver and then you die. Then you're going to Harry Carey. So not really. Don't do that. So funnel conversion rates. So for us, or for a lot of people, it might be from awareness, right? And then they do their first sort of sign up or install, and then maybe they give you a credit card or they join your club or whatever your company is, and then maybe they do something else or they compete, interact with social or whatever, and then ultimately they purchase, right? And then from there you can build a whole nother funnel. But really you need to build the funnel conversion rates from I don't know you to I'm your customer. And really think about it, and then try to understand with those analytics tools, what is that rate? So if 100 people know me now, how many of those became aware of me or became a member of me? And how many of those actually gave me a credit card? And how many of those actually joined my Facebook page or whatever you guys measure? And then how many of those actually converted into customers? And in time periods too. It's kind of crucial. And then weekly reporting, step 16. So this is kind of the ultimate right here. Is after you're doing all that and managing all that on a daily basis, the team, the setup, the strategy, the creative, all the channel stack, all of those pieces that we just talked about, right? Plus any crisis communication or craziness that happens, just all the things you're trying to manage, you've got to report on it weekly. You can never, ever let this go. You can't, because if you skip it, you'll skip it again, and you will not know where you are, and you can't track and manage your business. And these are some things you can report on. Installs, new and paid, your reach, your frequency of advertising, how many new accounts I get this week, how many of the installs actually registered with me, how many installs did their first order, what about my website? Are people registering on my website? How many are registering each week? How much of that is traffic? What percentage of traffic? How many of those are becoming purchasers? What are my top 5 web pages? What are my top 5 sources for traffic? Absolutely. You might get it elsewhere, but yeah. So she's asking, this is all CMO reporting, and the answer is no. It's okay. The answer, and we're almost done. Then we're going to go. And yeah, absolutely. This is all CMO reporting. If you're the CMO, you're the chief marketing officer. It's your job to know everything. Period. You can get it from your team, but you got to know and report everything. If you don't know it, you can't manage it. Your installs and orders, monthly installs, quarterly, your cost per install, social, marketing spend. These are just some examples. There's dozens, and you have to do what's right for your business, but you've got to build these things into a report that you can track. You can go back on mine, you can track it for 2 years. So I can tell you who installed in 2016 and who installed in 2018. And that's important because that's the only way we've grown. Because ultimately, and this is like a really good thing you've got to repeat to yourself all the time, what gets measured gets managed. I know it's an old cliche, but it is frickin' true. You've got to measure these things. And sometimes it'll be good news, and sometimes it'll be bad news. That's okay. Just deal with the bad news because you can't change if you don't know it. It's so critical. And we're, marketers, we love to be optimistic and have fun. But sometimes you got to face the music and deal with it, and then it gets better. And that kind of takes me, that's all the things I have done the last couple years plus. And it takes me to my 2018 snapshot. Like I said, when I joined Waiter and they absorbed us, and it was my CEO and his co-founders and a handful of people, and it was food delivery out in Louisiana, and we had a Texas market, just 3 or 4 markets, And then our team jumped in, and this is the part where I'm sure online my team is heckling me, thinking, "Oh, Sonny's going to take part of credit for all the growth," which is not true. It's the whole team working together. But on the marketing side, using these tactics and having a really great team for execution and a great executive team for strategy really enabled Waiter to really, really grow. And we're in like 210 cities now, in over 35 markets. And as of like about, 15 days ago, it was announced that we were acquired for that number, which is pretty crazy. Thank you. And we got a long way to go. I mean, look, this is just a start. But I really, truly know in my heart of hearts, all of the things we did there were our department's part in getting this outcome to happen, truly. And the operations piece and the sales piece and the exec piece and the engineering piece and, all the pieces have to work together, right? But you can't grow the company on the growth side if you don't employ tools like this. So this is really exciting for us. And like I said, we got another 10 years to go on that. But I'm going to give you two more that are really, really important, because it wouldn't be a JCal thing if we didn't go. And then I swear to God, we'll open up for Q&A. So the next thing is a marketing org at scale. So this is 16 plus. I think if you do get to scale, or some of you may already be at scale, but be thinking about this in the future. Divide your marketing team up into pillars, into brand, performance, insights, and local. I mean, for us, it's local, but just think more about pillars. So your marketing team will literally become a startup within a startup, or a startup within a company, and you got to think about it that way. And then you're going to re-look at remember I said a channel stack? So that's important. You always will have a channel stack. But now as you're growing, you're going to need a growth stack. And this is a really new thing called a CDP, a customer data platform. And this is something I'm super hyped on right now. You need a data pipe. And I'm going to show you some actual ones. And you guys, even as smaller companies or bigger companies, you should maybe look into some of these things, because this is sort of the 21st century way of marketing. So you'll need like a data pipe or a data warehouse like mParticle or Segment. Personalization at scale. So, like my wife's on Overstock and I'm on Overstock, but they talk to us differently. And you're like, how do they do that? It's this. It's all automated. So Pies, Braze, Iterable, those are all really good ones. Analytics, Amplitude, we got Facebook Analytics and whatnot. Location, we're location-based, right? So we're hyperlocal. So Radar is something we're looking at, really cool. Attribution is really crucial. So as you start doing more media and paid, and all of you will at some point, unless you do the next Google, but at some point you will, you got to have attribution. You got to know where your customers are coming from and really what the ROI is on those customers. That's so crucial. Like, is Apple search ads more ROI, or is it Facebook ads, or is it Twitter ads, or is it Snapchat ads? Well, you can see the numbers, but what are they doing in your business? So Apps Flyer, Tune, these types of things will help you with that. And then A/B testing. The product is kind of number one. So mixed panel, optimize, and things like that. So, and then of course that all has to live with your ad communication and content stack that we talked about before. So my name's Sonny Mayuba. You can email me or reach me here, and I'm the CMO of Waiter, and I really, really appreciate all your attention. I hope that helped you guys.
Thanks,
Do
Sonny.
we have
Yeah, we
we
definitely
got
have time for
time.
Q&A. I wanted to take our first question from our live stream audience. Matthew is asking, what's the ideal size of a marketing team? Did you address that? Sorry if I missed
Sure.
that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. There is no ideal size for a marketing team, is the answer. You should be thinking about what are the ideal outcomes I want, and then what size a team can do that.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Thank you so much for all the advice, and it's awesome.
Good.
I have a question with regard to growing your team. How do you hire? Especially you have a hyper-local business. You go to each of these markets, and what's your hiring strategy? How do you ensure that you hire high-quality people and you're all on the same page? And
Yeah, that's something we talk about a lot. Every company has a DNA. So, what's most important is, do they fit culturally? That's kind of number one, in my book at least. And then you're hiring for skills. So you just got to look at the role. So we've got brand ambassadors in the streets of all of our markets running around, like promo kids, rocking the Waiter shirts and delivering stuff to restaurants. And we've got performance marketers who are doing crazy, gnarly analysis, buying, optimizing ads and things like that. So two different skill sets. So do they culturally fit the company first? Do they want to be a part of your vision? Do they want to really join your team? To me, that makes the most important. And then do they have the skill set, or do they at least have the DNA for the skill set you can train up? I think that's the most important thing about hiring. That's right. Yeah, so she's asking if we have central teams and sort of distributed teams, and the answer is yes. For our company, yeah, we have a central team. You can call it corporate or central, whatever you want, and they do things at scale, right? So you can buy ads across forever. One person can do that. But somebody in a market, and we're local everywhere. That's one of the things that we've bet on is we've got people in markets representing Waiter, being a part of the community. They have to live in Greenville, South Carolina, or Woodlands, Texas, and so on. Question?
Hi, Sonny. I liked how you took an engineering mindset towards some of the things you talked about there. We try to do the same, and one of the biggest challenges we see is resource planning. So, there's 16 great things on there that we should all be tackling. Sounds like you ran into the same trouble with the marketing plan. How do we allocate a realistic amount of goals and objectives at the right stages with the right size of marketing team? If you can kind of walk us through your growth journey as your marketing team went from 1 to 5 to 10.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really good question. You've got to have a partner in crime, hopefully, who you can lean on. It could be your CEO or your VP or whatever, that you can kind of look at, and sort of weekly what you need to do is look at what is the biggest effect I need to have on the business. Like where is the company going? Are we trying to sign more restaurants? Are we trying to conserve cash? Are we trying to expand like crazy and take the world over? What is it we're trying to do as a company, right? Then from there, you as the head of marketing will say, okay, so if today we're trying to expand into more markets, then that means I need to really work on my launch process. That's my number one thing right now. So let's work on our launch process. Well, what do I need to do that? Well, I need a go-to-market strategy. I need a pre-awareness campaign. I need to help hire drivers. All the different pieces that go into launch. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to if the company said, we're just going to go super deep in the markets we're in, we're not expanding anymore. Well, then it's like, okay, I've got to grow frequency. I need to take more market share from my competitors. You know what I mean? Because you're right. We only have so many resources, both cash and time and people. So really, you've got to look at what is the business outcome that the company needs at this point in time. And it changes, as you know, all the time. And then what are my pieces I've got to work on? And some of the things around growth are going to be scalable across everything. And you just take those as you can. Like everything you saw here sounds like, wow, that's so great. You did it all. That's 2+ years of work, with a team of people, working on it. It didn't happen overnight. It's kind of like we picked out one thing, from the retreat, we got all these neat ideas, but it took us, 14 months to pick those suckers off. So you just look at them and you kind of go, well, what do we got to work on most right now? And for us, it laddered up to the North Star metric, which is we know we're filling the top of the funnel with installs. So let's work on everything that affects that and keep building it. And it was a trip we were at the Christmas party last year and we were kind of like, wow, like our table stakes for where we are today and where we were has completely risen. Like the bar has risen and we can do all that now, like in our sleep. Like our team just rocks that. And now it's like, that's why we're going to the CDP. We're going to go a level up. So you just keep taking them off one at a time. Customer data platform.
About Facebook analytics, you just said Facebook analytics, but Facebook is huge. All the data in it is huge. Do you have any advice as to how to template that and which bits to pick out? And I know it's according to the business, of course, but sometimes I just go back there and I'm like, what?
Right.
It's just huge.
Sure.
It goes on forever.
So so there's kind of two things buried in there. One is if you're going there and you're like, what the hell, then just get out of there. Don't worry about it. You've got enough to work on in your company, right? You should only be working on the things that are moving your business forward, really, what it comes down to. But to clarify, when I said Facebook analytics, that's actually a tool. It's not inside of your Facebook page. Do you know that? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like a tool you can sign up for, and they have an SDK you can put in your app, and it'll give you all this new insight into the behaviors of your consumers or customers or whatever. So yeah, you need a partner in crime with that. If you're finding yourself a little lost in there, and by the way, guilty on that as well. Travis, our head engineer, and Jeff, and a couple other people on our team coach me through that and help me set up events. And so you need engineering's help on that. It's crucial. But once you get it set up, you can manage installs and purchases and time on site and initializations and all these cool things. And you can see all that stuff. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Kinda? Okay. Okay.
Hi, Sonny. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you for recommendations or, advice on this marketing strategy. So my business is in the event space, so it's also geographic based, and it's for people who want to plan events without being event planners. So somebody who just has to plan a party or something like that. So I can grow geographically, of course. You want to dominate the geographic region first, but then there I can either expand to other geographies or I can think about events, right? So I start with very little events with just this size, then I can keep moving to other things, other type of events. And I debate a lot in terms of how to think about this from a marketing growth perspective. What's the best route to take to do it geographically or doing different verticals? What would you recommend there?
I see. When you say different verticals, you mean like cooking events or rock star events or corporate events?
Exactly.
So
you can do birthdays.
A style of event versus go own a market.
Yeah, what's equal on each event is it's probably the same budget because the operational is it's much faster to execute, so they can be different.
Let me ask you this. Is your product only for one vertical or is it for everything like Eventbrite?
Initially, right now.
Like, are you only for people who have pets or is it for everybody?
No. It's for anybody who wants to plan, let's say, food up to this budget or this type of buffet.
So it's only food?
Food right now is food and decor. That's it.
Food and decor. Okay.
Eventually, it will be more.
Yeah. Okay. So
and drinks.
Okay, and drinks, food, decor, and drinks. Okay. Okay, I got you. Pinterest is probably big for you. Yeah, I guess if that's the case, then I would probably own the vertical. But that's something you should pitch in front of Jason. Because it sounds like there may be a little bit of schizophrenia in the product itself. But if not, I would probably try to own the vertical and get as many people using it who have a stake in that discipline, as opposed to just owning San Francisco or just owning a place. Because it sounds like it's scalable. It can work anywhere, right? It can work in Portugal. It can work in San Francisco. Is that right? Yeah. So I would try to get every food lover in the world to use it. That's what I would do. I mean, there are two different strategies. That's a whole huge conversation. I would need to know a little more about the product. But, I mean, if it's food, drink, and decor, then, one, you may want to look at, can I narrow that a little more? But two, get everyone who loves those things to use it so they become your evangelists, and then you can expand out. Okay? Hi.
Hi. Thanks again for being here. Question about the hiring, just following on, but you were saying if you hire someone and you're more early stage, you're hiring someone who maybe doesn't know all of these new platforms but is ready to learn them, where's your go-to place to send a new kind of really someone ready to roll their sleeves up but to learn the best practices as they're constantly evolving, and some of those platforms we had up there I hadn't heard of. So where would I send someone to learn something?
Right. That's a great question. So there's a little bit of the temperature change happening around the world today. A year ago, if you spent $100,000 a month on Facebook ads and tried to get a hold of a human there, it was impossible. I mean, and still to this day kind of is. You're all nodding your heads, right? But guess what's happening? You spend $10,000 on Apple search ads and they're giving you a team of people to tutor you. Same thing is happening at Snapchat. Now that's on the ad side. That's a tool. So it's interesting. Customer service is making a comeback, which I'm so happy about because we don't all know everything. When it comes to analytics platforms, paid ad deployment, products that you're going to use to build and or market, there's a lot of resources you can do it. First off, the SaaS that's selling you typically will have a customer service department or at least demos, okay? And if they won't help you, then you should think about not using them unless they're just the best. But typically, they will help tutor you or at least have an onboarding period of a month or two. AppsFlyer is a great example for attribution. We chose AppsFlyer. You know what? They held our hand nicely through the process because it took engineering resources to get it up and running. So now we just study online and we, work on it together and that type of thing. So the company that you're working with is one. There's tons of content online on how to do it, or depending, whatever it is you're talking about. And then really it is kind of, rolling up your sleeves with your team and kind of figuring things out and doing a little study at night. But between those things, you can figure just about anything out. Good? Okay.
I have a question. And
I have an answer.
so
it might not be true, but it will be an answer.
I'm going to use it, so it better be good.
Perfect.
So my company is actually an automation software, which is used by Airbnb hosts, and it's actually a tech product for home automation. A big part of our business, sales, comes from our partners, so whoever we integrate with. How can we incentivize our partners to sell or market us more?
Very good question. Well, what do you think your partners care about?
That they don't lose customers because they are offering more tools to them, like us. We're like the...
No, that's what you care about. What do your partners really care about? Forget your company for a second. What do they care about?
They care about more customers, more revenue.
Bingo. Right.
Yeah.
So here's how you can get them to evangelize you a little more. I mean, first off, you have to offer a value, and it sounds like you do. So home automation means like it turns it into a smart home or something like that?
Correct.
The cleaning and the lights and all that stuff?
Correct. So we have all the operation-related workflows, which is eventually handled
by I can
hardware
rent my
software
condo at Squad, and it'll make me money, and it'll all be clean and cool. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So really, the only way you're going to get them to, there's really two ways. One is you're either a necessity, meaning they have to have you. But I know in your space there's kind of a lot of people who do that, so you're not a necessity. And then B is you have to help them with their outcome, what they care about, which is help them get more customers. So any way that you can justify that you're helping your integration partners get more customers for them, they're going to prefer you over the competitor. Does that make sense? Okay, you know what to do.
Hi, Tony. Thank you for an awesome presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We are a marketing analytics software company. So we compete with Google Analytics because we are an attribution and media mix company.
Oh.
And the question I have is, I'm a co-founder. I'm kind of a de facto CMO because I don't have a marketing team. So far, all the business has come through the relationship and word of mouth because the same CMO or VP marketing moves on and then they take us wherever they go. So our first $2 million came like that. This is the first time I'm thinking of extending a team, and I have to hire the first marketing person. So my question is, how do I build that team? What should be my first 2 or 3 hires? And I know that I have to focus on thought leadership, brand awareness, and analytics that I can take care of because I'm pretty good at that. But I think I need someone who can create the content and make it in the process that people can see it and they can relate to the brand. Yeah. So that is one question. And where should I, as a founder, should hand off everything to the marketing team?
Listen, everybody's laughing. Well, it's not going to happen like the way you're describing it. You're not going to be like, okay, here's the marketing team in a box, CMO plus a few support people. Click, I'm done. I get to focus on the fun stuff. Not going to happen. Here's how you should approach it. So you have a lot of duties that need to be done that would fit under the marketing realm, right? Some could be thought leadership and creating white papers and content. Some are going to be marketing to potential partners and that sort of sales piece, right? So awareness. Some will be internal. Some will be paid and that, customer acquisition and so on, right? So I think for you, you'd probably have to figure out, you don't have to start with the leader, by the way. That's sort of what I'm getting at, is what you can do is you can decide, okay, I want to get an awesome marketing leader, my kind of partner, my C-level person, and we're going to bring her in and boom, she's going to build the team with me. Or you can say, I know I need a leader, and I also know I need a thought leadership content person, a white paper research person, and a, call it corp dev, biz dev person, all right? So this is the marketing dream org I've got today that I need right now. And you can sort of post for all those and just start plugging them in one at a time. It's okay to hire someone who knows that someone's going to come in over them. That's okay. But you get that function going and done so you can start to move the business forward, right? Maybe you do get your leader first. But I would look at what what mechanisms do I need to get moving now that are going to move the business forward that fit under marketing? And is that, call it 3 positions, and I'm going to start advertising and or recruiting for those 3 positions. And as soon as I find the culture fit and the skill set, plugging them in. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay.
Hi, I have a direct-to-consumer e-commerce company, and we finished our seed. So we're kind of at the point where when we think about our channels, we get a lot of conflicting advice of, find something that really works.
Shocker.
Exactly. Find something that works and, scale it and try to really maintain focus on, 5 or so channels, something that's manageable. But we want to balance that with also making sure we're expanding and finding new channels so that we're not just relying on, Facebook and Google in terms of paid. So is there any general guidance in terms of maybe like % of time or money spent towards the channels that work versus kind of expanding into new ones?
Yeah, good question. Well, you have to constantly be testing new channels and new, not just channels, but new devices and mechanisms, right? Could be scalable things like Snapchat ads. It could be launch parties or, flyers, whatever, guerrilla street team stuff. So testing things is something you should always be doing, but I always think that you should be focusing on the channels that are working. I mean, if they're really working, if you're lying to yourself, then you need to face reality and go, hey, this isn't really working. We're trying Facebook ads and we're talking ourselves into it. That's the part you need to really face and go, is it really affecting the business? That's sort of the key. Is if you're an e-commerce thing and you're doing Facebook ads, you're going, well, I'm not getting a lot of sales, but man, our impressions are killer. We're getting awareness. You're nodding your head because that might be the case. Okay. Then you're lying to yourself and you're trying to justify it, right? You got to face it and say, this channel isn't working for me. Stop it. It may hurt for a minute because maybe you lose 3% of your sales, but we're going to go take that money and time, because it takes a lot of time to run Facebook ads, and we're going to try Pinterest or Snapchat or LinkedIn or whatever if on the paid UA side. Or we're going to set up a CDP and we're going to start to harvest our existing database, or we're going to try a referral program, or we're going to focus on the product. You got to just keep going until you find something that truly works. And you'll know it works because it'll go like this. The chart will do this.
Hi, I'm Ray, and I absolutely loved that. Thank you. I run a peer-to-peer activities marketplace. It's called Duop, and it's hyper-local. So if somebody says, hey, I'm going to do this much money if you want to join. The question I have a zillion, but I think the one that's most relevant for this group is with small teams, the crossover between sales and marketing. Kind of where do you draw the distinction where our account managers are the ones, kind of creating the content that we end up featuring people in marketing with, and then the community managers are very hands-on, lots of events, driving sales in this hyper-local space.
So your question is,
Sales
where do you draw the
marketing.
line between sales and marketing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how important is it to keep the teams kind of self-functioning?
Well, first off, I don't think you really need to draw lines between sales and marketing and engineering, or ops and executive team. There are natural lines that are living between those divisions. Really, it's about, and they all need to work cross-functionally to really prosper, okay? If there's any kind of friction there or something like that, really, if you've got salespeople who want to be marketers, which tends to happen sometimes, it's your job as CEO to keep everybody aligned on their goals. And that's really what it comes down to. If your salespeople are like, okay, hey, salespeople, I want to make sure you sign up 100 activity people a month. And marketing people, I want to make sure we're reaching 3 million people a month with our message. I'm making these up, but you've got to have clear metric-based goals for your divisions. And then you can measure to that, right? Because then you could come in on week 1 and say, how many signups do we have, sales guys? 3. Uh-oh. Something's not good. Why? Well, I was making a flyer with marketing. Okay, now we have a problem. Okay, another scenario. How many signups do we have? We got 60, and I'm 7 days in. Really? Yeah, I got 60, and I'm working on this flyer with marketing that's going to help me get another 60. I'm going to beat my goal. Now they're working great together, right? So it's really goal-based. The lines are natural. And just keep everyone focused on their goals. But they should be working cross-functionally. Our sales team, we work together every day. But we have very clear, his people are about signing up restaurants. I'm about getting users to order from restaurants. It's pretty clear. So we hit our goals, then we can play together.
Thank you.
All right, Jackie? Good? Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. No, it's great. And will we be able to get a copy of your deck? Is that?
Yeah, totally. If you want to reach out, you have my info up there, or Jackie's got it. Happy to share the deck or questions, and good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Sunny. Okay, I want to make sure this works, Roland. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, segueing from marketing to growth. Are you guys know each other? Let's. Can you? I want to make sure your works. So I would just press play and see if this works for you. All right. You may have to put it in play mode or something. Okay. Does that work? Oh, great. Okay, well, I welcome Roland Leitenberg from House Call Pro. He's going to talk to us about growth. I'll just hand the microphone over to Roland.
Very cool. How's it going, guys? Is lunch kicking in for you guys? The sugar, a little bit, hopefully? How many talks came before me? One? Okay. So I'm going to have a lot of mental clarity here from you guys. This is good. So a little bit about me. I'm going to talk a little bit about like go-to-market and growth. My title has always been really fuzzy. I call myself VP of Growth, but really I do growth, BD, and all kinds of crazy ideas. So I'll talk a little bit about my background and who I am. And my goal by the end of this kind of talk is to teach you guys a framework which I've used, and then also show you the decks that I've used in our fundraising story. As it relates to these different channels, and I call them bullets, and I'm going to go a little bit more into it. But once you see those, hopefully you'll get kind of a framework, and it's always good to see what other people are doing and what's out there. Because I don't think that fundraising decks get shared enough out there. And that's always the part that, even for me, as I was trying to build a deck, I was like, I don't know, let me like Google good decks, and it's hard to find. So I'm going to show you a component as it relates to kind of growth and go-to-market, because those are some of the biggest things that investors will ask you for and ask you about, and how you go about doing that, because that really shows the health of your business. So a little bit about me. I grew up, left high school, started playing a lot of poker online during the party poker days, and not really paying attention to school. I ended up going to school, and halfway through I decided to take some of those poker winnings and go start a dive shop in Cabo. And then after 3 years of doing that and no longer going to be Scuba Steve, I went back and finished school, and I figured I should go get a big boy job. So I joined Qualcomm. And in there, I became one of the founding members of Qualcomm Labs, where we took a lot of stuff that came from corporate R&D, and then we productized it and sold it out, which is not very typical. It's not very Qualcomm-like. And from that group, I found my co-founders of my current company, House Call Pro. So House Call Pro, we're now Series B. We're actually looking at raising our Series C, maybe a little early. And we've been growing really fast. We have around 40,000 different pros around the nation that use our software to run their home service business. So we build software for plumbers. And so we have plumbers, carpet cleaners, so very B2B focused. So you'll kind of see that throughout the presentation as I talk about it. But it's been really hard because these are types of individuals that you can't say, oh, let me go scrape LinkedIn and send them a sequence blast of 7 emails. I tried that. They don't really have, VP of operations at plumbing company. So I know a lot of you have all kinds of different companies you guys are starting. But hopefully, because my market's also pretty difficult, we have to do things that are not very standard. I'm going to kind of show you how that framework, how I thought about it, how to attack it. Because if you can do it this way, you can do it for all kinds of stuff, especially when there's nice data that you can scrape and find. So I'm going to share a secret with you guys. A lot of presentations come in saying, hey, this is the one way to do it. What I'm going to tell you is kind of like obvious, but also counter to what you'll hear. You'll see here in a second. There is no silver bullet. So early on, a lot of companies are like, oh man, if I can find that one growth hack. How many of you guys have heard that one Airbnb where they would cross-post it to Craigslist automatically, and that was one of the growth hacks? Have you seen that one? Yeah? Okay. And there's all kinds of stories like that where it's like, oh, that was the one thing they did, and it became really big. It's like, no. There is no silver bullet. There's no one thing. And you guys are going to see all kinds of tactics out there. And tactics are very temporal, and they only last for a small amount of time because once everyone starts doing it, it gets shut down. So if you don't have a process in place for finding those, I call them bullets, then you're going to have a really tough time competing and growing at the rate in which you want to. Now, along the way of finding bullets, you might actually find a silver bullet, but you shouldn't go out to try to find one because you're going to run out of money, you're going to run out of time, you're going to break a lot of relationships across the way trying to find it. So how do we do this? So what is a bullet? So the bullet has 3 components. So this is kind of how I measure it. The first one is cost. So what do I mean by cost? So when I talk about cost, I think from a channel perspective, Facebook lead ads, for example, there's a cost to them. They're $50 each, right? We use companies like Software Advice or Capterra or G2 Crowd, listing directories to source leads from. Or there's a cost to that. So there's a fixed cost. So as I start breaking down each channel, thinking about what I'm going to attack, I think, what's the cost of it? So for example, scraping leads on LinkedIn. There's no real cost besides getting in trouble if they catch you. When you're a small startup, nobody cares. You can do whatever you want. As you grow bigger, you have to be a little more careful in what tactics you use. So keep that in mind. The second one is difficulty. So how do you set up this channel? Now, some things might have a different difficulty rating for 2 different founders or for 2 different companies. You might come from a background of writing really good content because you used to be in PR, for example. So that's your secret superpower. So your difficulty there is lower than someone else. But as you think about the framework, apply it to yourself. And difficulty is not something where you're like, well, difficulty, and I'll tell you guys how my rating scheme works here, but it's different for every company as well, right? It could be exponential, it could be logarithmic, it could be linear. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more, but that's the second component. And the third component is quantity. And not necessarily by like how many leads you think you can get. I'm talking more about depth. So if everything works to plan and you've established this channel, right? You found this bullet. How deep is it? So how deep is this mine? Because if you're going to invest a lot of time and resources, you better hope to God that's only going to not going to produce only 10 leads per month, and then you're stuck. And you're like, great, I found this super efficient, super cheap, and it was really easy for me to find, but it doesn't go very deep. Because you're going to have to do that thousands of times over and over again. So those are the 3 components that I'm always thinking about when I'm thinking about different tactics to kind of grow my company here. And then as I'm thinking about tactics, I'm thinking about the 3 things. What's my ICP? So you guys all know what ICP is, hopefully, ideal customer profile. So one thing when I started my startup, I always thought was, oh, this is my customer, it's a plumber, it's him and his wife and his son. And that's what I thought was my ICP. And in the beginning, that was true, because that's all our product could handle. But as your product changes, you're going to have a different ICP. So that is something you're going to have to constantly reevaluate. I know that a lot of you guys go to kind of sessions like these, and you go through an exercise where you're all excited and you're trying to figure out what's your ICP. You do it once, but then you never do it again. That is a really, really big mistake. You guys constantly have to reevaluate it because your customer changes over time. You might be doing it consciously as a business decision because you're trying to target enterprise, for example, or you might be doing it subconsciously because you're marketing in some way you didn't even know you were influencing your target buyers, right, that are now going after your product. So the 3 things they need to be kind of qualified is, 1, are they ready? So are they solving some really big pain point? So in my case, it was the plumber missed payroll because the check bounced, that the homeowner, they did a big job, and now they can't pay their guy, and their sub is going to leave them and go work for some other plumber. So that was a really clear signal for us where, hey, we need to fix the way that plumbers do invoicing so they can get paid faster and on time. The second component is, are they willing? So is this something that is a big enough pain where they won't die without it, but this is something that's a need to have, not a nice to have. This isn't just like some numbers where they can make just some marginally better decisions. This is something that really affects their cash flow, affects their business, something that is really relevant to them right now. And then are they able to? So can they even afford your product? And are they ready to make the switch? So in our case, we had plumbers that have been doing invoices by hand for the last 20 years. So why would they change to doing something from an app all of a sudden? Like, what is that trigger point? So how would we hone our ICP? So as we're thinking about the ICP that we're building towards, that affects kind of the channels that we're looking at. So let's talk about that a little bit more. This is the framework that I use, and I'll tell you guys again, and it's sellable before, is you guys are going to find a lot of tactics out there. You're going to be talking to a lot of your fellow kind of founders, and you're going to be like, hey, I found this tactic. If you click this LinkedIn button 3 times and then twice, and then it reveals their phone number there, and then you put that phone number, and then you do a custom audience match, and then you match the custom audience to then a lookalike audience of 1%, and then your CAC is going to go way down, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, let's try that. But that's not what you need to do, right? So you need to understand what the framework is for it. So this is how I score these bullets, these channels. It's very simple. So the way that I score them is from a 1 to 10 scale. So 10 being really advantageous towards me, 1 being not advantageous to me. Okay, so for the first one, for cost. So if something is a high cost channel, so let's say I found a place that's willing to sell me plumbing leads for $500 each, right? That's not good. It's too expensive. My product's only $49 a month. That's never going to work. That's never going to work. So that, I'd rate that a 1. Something that has low cost, which a 10, maybe one might be like a referral. So imagine a plumber knows a drywall guy, and the drywall guy knows a painter, and the painter knows a house cleaner, and the house cleaner knows a window keeper. Well, that's really a window cleaner, window keeper. What's a window keeper? Who has a window keeper? No. Has low cost. And then the next component, which is difficulty. So 1 is something that's really difficult to set up, or something that's really difficult to find, or content that just takes too long to write. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have something where you're really good at it. So maybe you are really good at pitching journalists, and you can get a lot of traction, a lot of traffic from something like that, from PR. So that, I would rate that a 10. And then you have the quantity amount. So you have low quantity and high quantity. So really it's depth. So something that's really not deep, those channels are okay as long as they're really cheap and really easy, and you can do a lot of them. But if they're really expensive and really hard to set up, you definitely do not want to get anywhere near something that has a very low depth, right, low quantity. So score things, 1 being bad, 10 being good. Whoa. Now let's find the bullets. All right, so these are all ones, you really don't need to take notes on this, but there's all kinds of different channels. And I'm including all things, including sales tactics, biz dev, partnerships, JVs. There's all kinds of ways to get traction. And the beauty of being small and being young in your company's life is that you don't need a lot of them to make a big impact and make your growth numbers look phenomenal. So we've been growing 10% month over month for the last 3 years. Like last month, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do this month to grow that extra 10%. But back in month 1 to month 2, 10%, it's a freaking cakewalk month over month. If you're not growing 10% week over week, guys. So just something interesting to note. But throw all those things on the table. These are all channels. These are all bullets that you can use. So there's lots of things you can do, but you only have so much time before you run out of money, right? Or you strain your relationships too much, and all of a sudden you find yourself out of the house. Or your co-founder leaves you. So how do you do it? How do you prioritize these? So what I do is I would create a list of all my ideas. In the beginning, it was just me. Now I have my whole growth team, and we do these brainstorm sprints where we just put all the ideas, like no idea is off the table. No, like we have all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, we had one where we were hiring sign spinners standing outside of Home Depot. That channel ended up not working out. We had done things where we would walk into supply shops with donuts. So as they came in to go get their plumbing supplies, we'd give them a donut if they took a second to look at our app. That one actually persists. So we have partnerships there. We're not doing the donut thing anymore because that doesn't scale, flying around to supply houses. That works when you're trying to dominate San Diego, which is where I'm from. But you have this whole list. And really, it's as easy as multiplication. Okay, so you have your cost multiplied times your difficulty multiplied by your quantity. Remember, you've got them on a scale from 1 to 10. So I'm going to give you guys a really hard math question. What's the highest score that you can hit? 1,000. That's right. 10 cubed, right? Your lowest score is 1. Okay, so now that you have this, you're going to be able to rank all of your ideas in order, and you can start attacking some of them, because in the beginning, it's really important you figure out what you're prioritizing first. So here's kind of an example of like an internal sheet that we have. I just made up some things here. But you can see here, what's the bullet or the channel? What's the date? This is the idea brainstorm. Whose idea is it? And then a description. Descriptions can be like user stories, or they could just be like what the hell it is. But either way, it's got to be enough so if someone else looks at it from your team, they'd understand what the hell you're trying to do. Now you can see these scorings right here. And people ask me like, Roland, how do I know if it's a 9 or a 4? Or where do these numbers come from? How many of you guys use user stories in terms of development of either your web app or whatever? Okay. When you're using that kind of methodology, hopefully you're using it such that they're not really associated with time, but difficulty is associated with other things they've done in the past. So you can kind of rank, oh yeah, I remember building that feature, it's kind of like that one. You want to do the same with this one, because if you start associating it to time, then you start warping it, because your team might grow. So now you've got 2 people, and you're like, well, that project was a 5, but I had 2 people on it for a week. You don't want to go down that path. You're going to be like, man, that was like a really big project. I remember it took like a lot of effort. Yeah, I have I have a bigger team now, but I think they're roughly the same. So you want to scope it based upon your previous efforts that you've done. Now you're like, Roland, that's great, but I haven't done any efforts, or maybe I've done some. So where do I start? The answer is just go off of just not quite randomness, but be like, yeah, you know what? That's kind of middle of the road. That's not that hard. That's not that easy. Just put a number, kind of like a stake in the sand, and then start estimating. And you get this cool thing. It's called conditional formatting. Right? It shows you what should you do, right? The green things and not the red things. Now, it's not to say you don't want to not do the red things. It just means do them later if you have bandwidth, because you might run out of ideas. Well, you probably won't. You're all founders in here. There's an infinite amount of ideas. But this gives you kind of a concept. So all you do then is you just filter Z to A, and all of a sudden you're like, all right, guys, hey, we're working on Facebook lead gen. I've got a pretty good knowledge of how to use Facebook. I used it in my prior past. And so for me, the difficulty is really low, right? So that's ranked high, because that's good for me. And then Facebook, super freaking deep, right? If it works, Facebook will gobble up all my money, all my marketing dollars. So that's deep. The cost, it can be kind of pricey if you screw up a little bit. But that lets me figure out, okay, guys, let's just do this piece. That's easy. And now I can work my way kind of from top to bottom. And then what we do is we do what we call like a weekly growth sprint. And then we select, based upon the difficulty, how many we can do with any one given week. And sometimes they last multiple weeks. So for example, if you're doing partnerships, those take months, okay? So those things are amortized across of that total time span to set that up. For me, I thought it'd be really easy going into a plumbing supply shop and setting up a partnership where I gave them a rev share for each plumber they sent me. That took me 1.5 years to get. So it took me a lot longer, because it's an old school industry. They're like, what the hell? This is a widget that I can put on my shelf that, right, a widget, I mean my app, right? And all of a sudden, I don't have to stock it. There's no inventory. There's no carrying costs. There's nothing associated to it. So it blew their mind. So it took a little bit longer. But that well was super deep, 110,000 HVAC. And now I have 1,200, what they're called territory managers, out selling my software that were previously only used to selling HVAC equipment. So super deep channel, super difficult. Cost, it's rev share. And the way that I look at rev share, and hopefully you guys are, especially in the early stage, rev share isn't money out. It's just a cheaper product. Okay? So don't associate it to any CAC. If you pull it off the CAC, no investor is going to get you for that. You can be like, no, of course it's not CAC. I'll just raise my price by 20%, right, or 25%. So that's how we did it. So I'm going to give you guys, based upon that, just some strategies based across time, because your strategies will change over time. So in the super early times, kind of where you guys are right now, the biggest thing that you want to do is pick a bullet, or pick a channel that you have some sort of expertise or some knowledge in. There is a reason you started your startup. Why? What makes you special? Hopefully there's something that drew you to what you're doing, that you have some knowledge that other people do not. Because if you don't, it's going to be way harder for you. So pick some channels there that you think you're going to be really good at, which that difficulty score, remember the D part of that equation, is a 10, a 9 or a 10, right? Something that's really easy for you to do. So as you mature a little bit, you want to go wider, so try more channels, more things, rather than going, PR seems to be working, let's do more and more and more PR. Because guess what? The more and more that you do, and I keep harping on it, is the marginal difficulty increases, as well as the marginal cost of doing it, because you're going to have less and less publications that will cover you. Like, oh, damn, it's this startup again. Leave me the hell alone. How many times am I going to talk about, pet boxes, or I don't know, whatever the heck you're trying to pitch. So go wider, because remember, guys, you only have to grow this 10% week over week, or whatever you want to set your goal at, to get funding. All you need to do is just make a really pretty graph, so that way you can get the investors. So go wide, because there's so many things that you can do in growth hack in the early days. Like, I wish I could go back to the early days because there's so many things you can do, and you can create results like instantly. So you guys are in a really fun time. So mid-game hunting strategy. So what we started doing kind of heading into our Series A was really starting to double down on some of them. So one of them, for example, was a forum partnership. So I was like, okay, my ICP is a carpet cleaner. Okay, if I was a carpet cleaner today, where would I go to learn how the hell to clean carpets? It seems pretty simple, but actually it's pretty complex, I assure you guys. Well, there's this forum called Truck Mount Forums. What the hell is a fucking truck mount? What is a truck mount? I don't know what a truck mount is. Oh, it's a thing that sits in the van that every carpet cleaner needs. Wow, so there's truckmountforums.com. All they do are they talk about their Everests, they got their ProChem 8800. You know, like I know all of these things now that I never thought that I'd have to know before, right? But this forum was just one of many forums because not only now was our ICP these carpet cleaners, we have window cleaners. We have home cleaning companies. We have all of them. So guess what? For window cleaning, there's WCRA, Window Cleaning Resource Association. Great. Okay, so there's now lots of different forums. So we had the one channel, and as we were getting under a Series A, I was like, well, fuck, there's got to be more of these forums out here. Let's start doubling down. And all I did was a rev share deal with all of them, gave a discount to their users, and all of a sudden, forum owners were making recurring revenue, which is great, rather than just running ads based on clicks, because forums are kind of dying. And I got access to their whole, whoa, that was loud, to their whole lead list. I got really excited. Because they would say, hey, here's my email list of the 50,000 carpet cleaners that have joined my forum since I started. I was like, thank you very much. I'll pay you your rev share. The guy now, by the way, we pay for the mortgage of his 2 homes based on the rev share. So he's very, very happy. And that's a deal that I cut early on, but I'm very happy that I did because that one literally got us our Series A in terms of customers. So let's talk about longer hunting strategy. So for me, I never go hunting for what we call it like these moonshots or the silver bullet. I never expressly try to figure one out because they're very elusive. And like I mentioned before, you're probably not going to find one. But if you find one along the time you're getting all these lead bullets, right? All these channels just perform over and over time. They're very consistent. That's really cool. So what I do kind of in my team, still 90% of the time is dedicated to just go find more lead bullets because I know that does work. But 10% of the time we do crazy stuff. Early days when we had like a marketplace, you can Google house call elf. You'll see that dressed up like Wilford the elf, and you're like, what the hell does it have to do with plumbing things, right? We used to have a consumer side app like Uber for X, where we're like, hey, you know what? In order to get a plumber to join the platform, they'll join if we give them jobs, right? So we're like, hey, let's build an app for that. But all kinds of crazy stuff. So we always keep like a little small chance for just some crazy thing. And always start with something maybe that just doesn't scale, because maybe it turns into something. But make sure you don't go into it trying to hunt for those, because you might not ever find one. And that's okay, because plenty of great businesses are built without that. So everyone's always like, well, Roland, okay, tell me about LTV to CAC. So how does this work when you're looking at channels? Because obviously you mentioned cost. What is that all about? Payback is greater than all, especially when you guys are first starting out. You guys should not even try to guess an LTV. Which are based on what you're doing. You don't have enough churn metrics month over month to even be able to say anything credible to me. If I'm an angel on the side, so when I see decks and people are like guessing at the LTV and they have like 4 months worth of data, I'm like, come on, man. Like why? And I know that it's not right. I know they're trying to do the thing by making it look like, oh my God, I got a 20-1 LTV to CAC. It's like, no. Tell me how quickly you get your money back. Because if you get your money back in 6 months, oh my God, I'm in love. Even if you get it back in a year, it's great. Right? And depending on what verticals you're going after. But focus on the payback period. That's what's really going to matter, especially when you're younger too, because guess what? If you don't raise money, you might have to be bootstrapping it for a little bit. And at that point, every dollar really counts, and you want it as quickly back in your pocket so you can go reinvest into other things. You can keep growing. So now, once you raise that money, start playing around with investors' dollars. You know why? Because you paid out of your equity for those dollars. So go spend their money on longer LTV to CAC, things that just have higher CAC, because you can. But don't do it with your own money, which is equity in the beginning, and money is really hard to come by. So start testing some of those more expensive channels. So don't be afraid when that C, right, part of it is high in the early days, because you can always come back to it later. That's why you keep that idea backlog. Because over time, really that C, while it might be a 1 for you right now because you're a baby startup, once you got some money, it's like a 4 or 5. You're like, that's kind of like my other channels. Let's throw 10K at that and see what it does for a month, okay? So don't forget about those. So if you did it right, hopefully you have a lot of lead bullets. You have some solid unit economics because you've only been scaling the ones that are working. You've prioritized through the framework the channels and the bullets you're working on such that you picked off all the low-hanging fruit. Guys, like it's not that hard to get 10% month-over-month growth like in the early days. It's really not. You're literally going from like 10 to 12, 12 to 15. Like you can do it. You could literally just cold call and do it. So make sure you go after all that low-hanging fruit first. You guys should also have your framework more solidified. This is what we use. I don't know, I just kind of made it up based off a gut feel. I think other kind of growth people also teach something similar. I know there's like an ICE model out there. Brian Balfour, he's a cool guy. I like to read his stuff. But you'll develop something that works for you and for your team. And then maybe, if you're lucky, you'll find that silver bullet along the way. But don't bet on it. So I'm going to share you guys some slides from our decks. Starting from our Series Seed 1, and then we did a Series Seed 2. Before that was a thing to do. Now I think it's pretty common. But back then I was like, oh, crap, we're not raising our Series A. All right, we'll call it Seed 2 because it sounded cool. And then Series A, and then Series B, and now we're looking for a Series C. But in the early days, these are the channels that we had. This is what we pitched. So remember, when we first started, we were kind of Uber for X on the consumer side, and then on the pro side, we were like Square plus QuickBooks Online plus Google Calendar. Okay, so that was early days. And so we thought, okay, this is what we literally pitched. We pitched on the consumer side the channels that people want to get their tech gadgets installed. This is when like Nest was still like a hot thing, not in like every house. So we pitched those. We're giving away Nests. We wanted to make sure we had enough supply across the categories. What else would we do? We made our geos that we launched in really small so we can control it. I remember we picked the neighborhoods in which we lived because literally it would make it easy for us to flyer after we got home from work, right? So we'd run paper routes and flyer door to door, and we'd tell customers like, hey, I'll come like install whatever the hell gadget you want, and we were the pros back then. We thought there was a cool growth hack that ended up not working long term, but we would give money back to schools, right, to PTAs. So we said, hey, you know what, moms, dads, if you want to support your school, a percentage of the jobs that you're doing on our platform, we'll put it back into your kid's school. So like keep it hyper local. So there's some channels we worked on. Obviously, vial credits. Come on, who hasn't heard of that? Give 20, get 20. Come on, it seemed like rocket science. And then obviously on the pro side, we have our different channels. So pretty much this was just a bunch of bullshit and a bunch of stuff that we just tried. But it was enough to get us a $1.5 million check from eVentures. Obviously, every investor, your experience may vary. A lot of our thing was based upon our team, but we had an idea on what channels we were going to hit, and they were kind of working. Microphone up. So what do we do for our Series C2? Okay, we got real here. I forget these numbers even. All right, so remember those forms I talked to you about? Here we go. Here's the forms. Here's what we spent, sales spend. We got in trouble. Remember that rev share component? They're like, yeah, you got to include that as marketing spend. I was like, come on, guys. So we hid some of it. Either way, we acquired some pros, and it worked really great. Then we did this automated outbound voicemail text email. So what we did is we scraped a company that starts with Y that has a lot of things on it. And I used to be able to say it. Now they're a great partner of ours. And then once we did that, we would send them an email that said, so it was a plumber, hey, can you fix this? We sent them a picture of like a toilet, and they'd be like, what the hell? What's wrong with it? And there really was nothing there, but now we got their email address. Then once we got their email address, we added it to the sequence. We got their phone number. So we would go like call, email, voicemail bomb. Do you guys know about ringless voicemail, RVM? It's a cool tool. Have you ever gotten a phone call, and then it like hung up before you picked it up? You're like, what the fuck was that? What? And then all of a sudden it goes like, oh, missed call, missed message, and you're like, huh, what is that? And you listen to it, you're like, oh, God damn it. That's what that is. But imagine if you're a plumber, you cannot ignore your phone. You are tied to your phone because that's where your jobs come from. So thinking about how do we get a hold of them, that's how we did it. So obviously there was a cost to that because we're scraping and stuff, and then we got to pay our sales team out. So then we got our lead gen. I remember that. We do a lot more of that now. Retargeting kind of worked. But you can kind of see referrals. You have some different channels. So we found some lead bullets, and it worked. And we had a pretty nice blended CAC, and it was working out for us. Because back then, I think we were charging like $4 per month for the entire platform. Now we charge $249 a month. That's a whole nother panel or a whole nother discussion. Then there was this slide. Yeah, this one was cool. So this slide made it through lots of different slides across our fundraising adventures. But people love seeing funnels, even VCs. They're like, how do you make it happen? Well, you put a whole bunch on this end, and they end up in a whole bunch of one-ones. But we showed them, hey, here are the funnels, right, where it starts. How do they get contacted? What do we do? Guess what? Plumbers don't sign up just based off an email. You got to talk to them. Okay, they're people that like to talk. They like to kind of see what they're buying. So we always say, well, if you're a visual person like me, let's get you on that web demo so you can see what you're buying. And they're like, what's a web demo? We're like, oh, dang it. All right, well, I got to figure that one out. That's another story. So we showed what that funnel looked like. And the ones that we didn't win, why? Because we're like, oh, feature incomplete. Well, we'll win them later. We'll build that. Right? We'll increase what we can do. So, okay, so Series A, we've got to start getting serious here. All right. Now we got to show like the depth. Remember I was talking about quantity? So now we got to show the depth of these channels. So this is what we showed. So obviously we kept just like blasting the hell out of these 3.3 million contractors across the nation. And we're scraping the California State Licensing Board, which is awesome. And then we have our forums. Remember I told you the story about the forums? Before it was just one. Now you have like 3 different ones. So you can see what the TAM is. Well, actually this would be the SAM. Well, no, the TAM in each channel. So you see how deep they are. And then the suppliers. So look, they have tons of customers. That was like a big deal that I closed. So that was fun. But now we actually have to show like not just the channels that they are, but like how deep they are. Because the question is, if I give you this money, what are you going to do? Well, go deeper in the channels, I hope. So what are your channels? Show them. This became that slide in that deck. And then here we go, back again to the funnel, because it worked so well for us last time. So now we just show, hey, there's more that we contacted, more leads, more demos, good fit, and now we won even more. And the cool thing is like our close rate, almost once we went on a demo, 1 out of every 2 ended up signing up on the spot. Sounds kind of crazy, right? So we're like, yeah, that's cool. And guess what? Once again, hey, the ones that we didn't close, they're feature incomplete. So we'll win them later. And they love seeing that. So remember I told you guys a little bit about payback? So CAC payback here. So back then we were charging $41.40 a month apparently. No, this is what we did. We blended this number across. We had 3 different tiers, and then this was our CAC, the $295. And so we started in the red, obviously, right? And payback is how quickly do you pay back your original CAC, and where do you hit it? So what we showed was, hey, our payback was here, and now it's here, and now it's here, and now it's here. And once you start getting in that mode, investors are like, whoa, that payback's going quick, because essentially they're thinking, oh, I can double my money every year, right? If you get to 6, so now all of a sudden their wheels start spinning. So this was a really cool slide that had a big impact, but related to those channels. So what do we do for our Series B? We got a designer. All right. So with this designer here, it looks a little more fancy. And of course, we have the Tom's Plumbing truck. This is actually a real logo from one of our things, but a stock truck. But you can see now, obviously, we still have our outbound sales. You don't see as many numbers, but you see the sales leads coming from other channels. We have our consumer booking. We did that Yelp partnership. It was great. Our suppliers, we got more of them, not just one, right? We doubled down. We tripled down. We got more suppliers. And then, community forums. So we just listed one, but there's more. And then we showed some other cool stuff, right? Which is just less numbers. So you could show what's churn, what your LTV, and again, what's your payback. And all of a sudden, the investors, you go from left to right. So you start left, right, right. So in the bottom right, they're like, 0 payback. What does that mean? Well, as soon as we sell them, we get all our money back. We can go do more stuff. And like, wow, that's cool. Because essentially the cost of the software was more than the CAC. So when we showed that, that's why we broke it out that way. Because it really kind of piqued investors' interest. Yeah. 5.5 month payback. Yeah, so within 5.5 months, we'd have all of our money back. If they selected the monthly plan. We also figured out that a lot of them can't pay for the software 12 years up front. God, I wish. 12 months up front. And so, yeah. So the 6 month, so I'll tell you the second one was 0, but the 6 month was 5.5. But we did 6 months because most of them couldn't do 12, but they still wanted a discount. So we're like, oh yeah, we'll give you a discount, but you got to pay 6 months up front because guess what? That helps our churn numbers. And then the payback on the 0 was because the cost of acquisition was less than the money that we charged them for the 12 months. So we got our money back right away. Yeah. We'll do some questions later. So here we go. We got the funnel again, but it just looks a little cleaner, a little less information. I feel like the later and later series that you get as you're rating or as you're raising, you need less data because they're going to go find it all out anyways. You just got to make it good enough to tell a story. And then we got to a 60% enrollment rate, which is even crazier. We're not there anymore because we're being more aggressive, but still good to see. So what are we doing now? right? What does it look like now? So these are from our board decks. So these are cool. So obviously this one, guys, I got to blur out, otherwise I get in big trouble. Because this literally shows everything. But yeah, as you can see, lit is what we call lost in training. Really, that's the reverse of free trial to conversion. Right? So if you have 80% trial to conversion at 80%, lit is the inverse of that, so like 20%. Then we show the churn. So the life is just 1 over the churn. So you see how many months they stay, and then you can calculate their average sales price. And of that, there's a SaaS component, and then obviously we make money on the credit card transaction as well. And then for each channel, now we have so many lead bullets, we've got all the unit economics that we need. So we know exactly what the CAC is across all the different things, what the payback is. We measure a full funnel conversion. This is a big one for you guys. So, you know, a good example is we could buy software advice leads at $100 a pop, but they're only so deep. And we have a 20% full funnel conversion. That's great. But if I can get Facebook leads at $5 a pop, so like a 20th of the cost, and even if the full funnel conversion is 5%, that's still a 5x better channel because it's super deep than software advice. So you want to measure full funnel conversion. And then remember like the depth and the confidence. So we measure that as well. So those kind of components from the framework make their way inside of, whoa, no one saw that. Make themselves inside there. And then, so this is, this is in our new Series C deck. That's right. So you can see here what's stacking across different things that we're doing. And you can see there's not like one thing that's way bigger than the other one. Okay. And then same with the kind of the CAC trend. So over time, like, are they staying equal? Are they not? What does that look like? Because a lot of investors are probably like, well, Roland, I know how this trick works. When you're young, these channels are super cheap. But as you get older, they're getting harder and harder and more expensive. So you want to counter that with like, nope, you're wrong. Let me show you. Right? And if they stay roughly the same, they're like, oh, shit. Like, they're growing. And they're growing at a rate which is a really good unit economics. You want to show that component. So that's kind of the last slide, but I figured I'd open it up for Q&A here. Any kind of questions? I think, yeah, we have some time here. The other thing I'll mention too, if you guys want a copy or a duplicate of kind of the framework, I guess I'll give it to Jackie and you guys can do it and play with it. It's really easy, but I know it's always nice to kind of start from something and then you can kind of fill it out. All right, go ahead.
On the cost of acquisition payback slide,
yeah.
How do you get do you get the question in there like, well, how many are you like? Is everyone getting to that point? What's the churn, and what % are getting to that point? Because I don't think it was on that slide. And does the investor ask that when you show them that slide?
For sure, they'd ask. Yeah.
But you're purposely not putting it.
So let me tell you this: a lot of people think you create one slide deck, and that's the one slide deck used for all investors. Every slide deck is different because literally we'll like read about different investments. We're like, oh man, that guy really cares about churn. Okay, let's like address that and put like a churn slide in there. Okay, because they're going to come on there. Or one's like, oh, they don't even care about CAC. Like they just want to put $30 million of work and let's figure out if they want to like do it. And so then you need to focus more on your channel. So the answer is depends on the investor that you're talking to. All of them invariably will get to that point, right, where they're like, oh, what's the churn? Because that affects a lot. But obviously churn is also a moving target because I can make churn worse by being even more aggressive. I can also be super conservative and reduce churn a lot. And I can also, like, all the numbers are really, as founders, they're all in your control. You can tell whatever story you want. Because if I want churn to go down, I'm like, all right, all new pros I sign up, 2-year contract minimum. Okay, what do you think is going to happen to churn in 2 years? Right? It's going to start going down. So you can change your numbers as you need to. So if you feel like you're getting a lot of pushback on certain things, figure out the hacks that you can do to change those numbers. Because in the end of the day, the investors are giving you money, especially at this stage, because they believe in you. So don't let numbers get in the way of that investment. Hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Can you talk about building a growth team, and especially on the B2C side?
Sure, yeah. So building a growth team. So in the early days, it was just me doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And then as I started growing, I started stealing resources from other departments. So I'd commandeer and get half time from my marketing person, half time from my designer, half time from engineering. And I'd bundle these into these campaigns and things that had to perform. And then I'd go tackle things. Now I have more of a dedicated growth team, which are 100% working on all of our projects. And I still have split resources across different things as I need, even when it comes down to legal. As it results to like B2C, in the early days, It was just me, and then B2C failed. So I can't give you too much advice on that one, but I would structure things similarly, especially at the early stages where like everyone has to be involved in growth, especially like at the founder level. You cannot be like, yeah, I hired this kid and he was at DoorDash and he was at director level. I poached him and he's going to go run my growth team. You're like, no. Like in whatever stages you're all at now, which I assume is really young, you should be owning it, just full stack, top to bottom, and all the functions of it. Yeah, so, yeah, a little different question, but so my title is VP of Growth, but I don't know, titles are titles. But they're more director level, I guess I'd call them, and I assimilated them from different parts of my org, and I kind of cherry picked them. Like, I think of my growth org as like part EQ, part IQ. So I try to convince plumbers to do things that they are uncomfortable with, like let someone book them online. Okay, so I need people that are like really high EQ, so really good salespeople. So Alyssa, who's my right-hand woman, she crushes it. She crushes in sales. Like she's my EQ, so she can go tell a pro anything, and they'll do whatever she says, even though the product sucks at that point. And but it's really good for the pro to do anyways because first mover advantage. So I have like an EQ kind of component of convincing my channels to do what I want them to do, or they could be someone who's really good at writing content or resonating with your ICP or whatever it happens to be. And the IQ part is more like the growth hacky dev. The stuff where you need a little more technical knowledge to actually scale the thing that you're doing. Yeah.
So you mentioned LTV and not to pay attention to it early stage.
Yeah.
But I get that question all the time from investors and some big channel partners. So how do you deal with that?
How old is your company?
We've been around. One of the channel partners that keeps asking us. We've been working with them for 4 months.
Do you have a rev share deal with them?
Yeah.
Okay, and how old is this partner? Is it like a crufty plumbing supply company, or is it like a tech company that like knows their shit?
They're a coaching training company.
Are they worried about LTV because there's other people that do what you do and they could go with them?
No, I think they're worried about LTV because they want to know how much energy they should be investing in the partnership with me.
So the way that I pitch it is more about, we want to make sure that, so this coaching program, I assume they're selling some kind of coaching something to someone else who's also your split customer. Mm-hmm. So I'd say our goal is mutually to make sure that they're successful because in the end of the day, they're going to be more sticky. Now, the early data shows they are more sticky, but it's only been 4 months. So I understand that you're concerned with LTV, but we wouldn't be doing in this together if we don't think there's some degree of success for our end mutual customer. And then that's usually how I address it. Because if they're really trying to like hammer you on LTV, then it seems like their partnership is driven more by money, less by success of their end client. Because I don't, it's too hard to understand really, I don't know what you're doing. But if that is not happening, like if you're not helping make their end consumer more successful in whatever you're jointly selling to them, then the money part is not enough. So for example, because otherwise they wouldn't be asking as much about the LTV.
Investors in LTV in your first seed round, your second seed round?
The first one, no. The second one, no. Yeah, it's too early. Like any number really is like, I can give you a number if you want, but any real good investor, the ones that you want, will be like, Roland, I know that I asked you for this. I know that you don't really know. It seems like there's enough data to kind of say like, you're kind of right. You could be off or not, but you know, in the early stages, it's got to be less about that. I know that things have changed in the last 4 years, so don't get me wrong there too, but that's kind of my advice I'd give you.
Okay, so I love how candid you are, by the way. Do you hear me right here?
Yeah.
So you've been really candid in the way you talked about growth and growth hacking, and I have to ask you maybe a little bit of an unconventional question.
Sure.
Because in this stage that we're in, where we're growing really fast, any tools I deploy on a daily basis could get us a lot of traffic. Mm-hmm. But how strategically should you think about when you're raising money and how you should be getting that traffic if you're going to, grow traffic really quickly by deploying 10 things today, but you may not have those things in your arsenal when you need them to show the growth in the future. Have you thought that way, or are you just doing what's right for the business?
No, that's true. So it depends on where you are in your storytelling, because you want like the numbers to reflect the story that you're telling. And there were times when like I had 3 BD partnerships on the forum side. I was just kind of like holding off on them. And actually the best thing happens when you tell people no. like, oh, I got to hold off. We're not ready to do this yet. But you got to figure out like what's the story you're looking to tell, and if you're hitting your numbers or close to them without it, just keep on keeping on, because you don't need to release those channels yet until you really need like, oh man, we got to get another 10%. I don't have any more like tricks in my bag of tricks. So what I would do is kind of like sandbag them a little bit, because at the end of the day, like if you truly believe in your company, it doesn't matter if you're going to make an extra, I don't know, 10K, 20K, wherever you guys are at MRR, like this month over next month, you're not going to die from it. But if it helps you tell that better story and create that like that perfect graph, then that's what you want because it's going to make your next month easier. Because obviously, while I do say when you're younger, it's easier to create that 10% week over week or 20% month over month growth, it's still stressful. And it's nice to have something kind of in your bag of tricks to pull out when you need it. So I would almost say you could run one of those campaigns or whatever it is, but throttle it to like 50%. Because if you know roughly what you're going to get from it, because obviously you're saying, well, it's going to create a lot of traffic for me, well, throttle it. And then just be like, well, I could 2x this number. And then at least you know. That's my advice.
Hey, I'm Helena Fogarty. How are you?
Nice to meet you.
That was great. That was so great because you're so scrappy and you're so forthright about what you've done for growth hacking.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to understand a little bit more about the timeline because, you're so involved in everything, but I'm sure, like, when was your first seed round?
Sure.
And how much time had you been working on the project before the seed round? Did you have financing before that? How big is your staff now? Kind of the inside baseball.
Sure. Okay. So we started in the summer of 2013. We had kind of an MVP project we're working on the side before we pitched investors and decided to leave Qualcomm and our big paychecks. So, in reality, a couple months, we raised our first Series Seed 3 months out of the gate. And then the next Series Seed came about a year and a half later in 2015. And then at the end of 2015, we did our Series A. And then it took us almost 2 years to get to our Series B. Yeah. We were just lucky because we had a good team. So we did the crazy thing and we launched with 5 co-founders, which is like dilution's a bitch. But we wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have 5 co-founders because my other 4 co-founders, they're super technical. So even my CEO and co-founder, he's like the nerdy PM CEO type. And then I'm more the product BD growth guy that gets out there and speaks in front of crowds like this. So it just depends on the team mix. Early on, if you have a really strong team, you can go out of the gate and raise money like easy, especially from like friends, family, and fools. Like it should be no problem. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a bit specific, but it's funny that you're speaking today because I've been thinking about hiring a growth person in general between seed and Series A, and I was thinking one specific person to handle growth, also still working with the other teams, but just as I've always done the growth stuff, but as we get bigger, I have a lot more responsibilities that I need to handle and I'm not as focused on it. What are your thoughts on bringing in one person or bringing someone from your team, giving them that role to have like one person dedicated to growth, but still to work with the other people within your organization?
If it wasn't me, I would probably do it somewhere around the Series A, because like the founders still need to be really involved up until that point, in my opinion, because it like that literally is what gets you the investor check, is the growth component of it. I don't know, we have over 100 employees now, and still my team is only like of FTE is only 4. But I have a whole team that I can take time from. So if I were to count up like all the other hours, maybe 10.
So it's okay not to have them fully focused on the growth.
Totally, but you need someone who's like a PM of growth. Like who writes down the idea backlog? Like who owns that?
Yeah, that
should be you.
Okay.
It should be you up until Series A. You can then have someone like Junior that kind of like keeps track of them and like, all right, now we're doing this in this iteration, pop it in. But for now, you should definitely be owning that backlog of ideas and then pull in people as you need help to execute on those campaigns.
Okay, so you think founders should execute probably until Series A?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, I'm Karen.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for everything. I have 2 questions. One is, when you're working both sides of the market and you're the sole person in charge of growth, how do you balance that? And my second question is back to that LTV. When you're telling me that the investor would most likely just be focused on the payback, what do you base that timeline on when you don't have it?
well, you should always have a timeline on payback because you know what it costs, right, to acquire the customer, and you know what you charge. So you should always have that payback time frame, like regardless, because it's just the cost divided by the, right?
Just to back it in.
Yeah.
But if you're growing your market, then you're just telling them this is the far outside of that.
Yeah, well, what you just show is you say, hey, look, if the customer is currently that I'm going after, it takes me 8 months to pay back my original CAC. Yeah, and then what
based on current.
Yeah, current. And what I was showing was progress over time. So Mark Suster, he has a cool thing about lines, not dots. Like that applies to lots of different things. If you haven't read it, Google it. It's a good one. But essentially, like if you can show that progression, then they can see, wow, like they used to be here, now they're here, now they're here, now they're here. Holy shit, now I got to invest. Like so if you can show that, it's a good story to tell. And then what was your first question again?
How do you balance when you're the growth person, both sides
two-sided marketplace?
Of the market? Yeah,
I think of it like a ladder. So you can't climb a ladder with just your left foot and your left hand and climb all the way up unless you're like Superman. And you could, but reality is probably not going to happen. So you kind of got to go like a little bit left, a little bit right. My general advice is start with the supply side first. So whoever is delivering some sort of piece and at least get enough supply, because if you have demand and no supply, then all your demand leaves and demand is expensive to get. And then in reverse, if you have a lot of supply, if they don't get jobs, like, all right, fine, as long as your platform delivers some sort of outside value other than it's just job component itself. Yeah.
So, yeah, great insights. Thank you. My question is with regard to the measurement of your channels. So some of the channels, if they are digital channels, it's very easy to measure all the conversion through the stages. But if it's an offline channel, like passing out the flyers and stuff, you may put a discount code there, but people just put in the website, and without that discount code, how can you reliably discount those channels? Basically, you never know whether those channels really work out or not.
Yeah.
Or what are your thoughts about that?
Lucky for you, in the early days, you're probably not doing a lot of other things. So if you're not doing a lot of things and all of a sudden you start handing out flyers and your numbers peak, it's not just because you got a TechCrunch article, or maybe it is, but just take that out. So what you want to do is you want to isolate. So if you can understand what your baseline is, given your experiments, and you're going to do something crazy like a flyering experiment, at least know roughly where your baseline is and then add it. And then what we do too is, we have organic as a channel, but really like organic as a channel is like pro-to-pro talking. It could be a BD deal that just didn't get tracked correctly. It could have been like a marketing campaign where they didn't put in the discount code. And then what we do is we end up blending a component of that organic across the channels on a pro rata basis. That means that, let's say I had 4 channels, one of them being organic. What I would do is I would take a component of that organic traffic and attribute a little bit of those other ones from that organic piece. So let's say I get 100 leads. I have 4 channels. 25 from organic, 25 from Facebook, 25 from something, 25 from something. That 25, I would say, maybe 50% is just like untracked, some sort of leakage, and I attribute those other 3 channels equally across that 25. So I would say roughly 25, so divided by 3, so 4. So I'd say roughly 4 more of that organic actually came from Facebook, but it didn't attribute. 4 more came from this, 4 more came from that. So it's half of that organic channel. But just decide whatever that is, and then just stick with your guns as you're telling your story across the way. And if some VC wants to come in and kind of correct you, be like, okay, well, what do you see in the market? You see a lot more pitch decks than me. So what do you think is fair? And then just say 30%. So you say, okay, fine. You just take that coefficient, multiply that 30% times that thing, and then you go, here you go. It still looks freaking rad. Because at the end of the day, you still have your CAC on one side.
At the end, it's not about to convince the VC, it's about to convince myself on which channel is actually effective.
For sure. But you're in a business, obviously, to scale it beyond just like a lifestyle stage. So at that point, it doesn't quite matter quite as much, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roland. Please, big round of applause for Roland. Thank you. Can we share your deck with the group or some version of it? Okay, we'll follow up on some version of it. Okay, great. So we're going to take a quick 5-10 minute bio break. Then we're going to hear from Jenny Lefcourt from Freestyle Capital, and Becky from WSGR is going to tell us about term sheets. So get some coffee and come right back. Thanks. So
yeah, I was warm. Warm today.
no one's going to think you're any less professional if we're not.
Okay.
Do you want to clear this in case you want to sit?
Sit, but
yeah. And you can also sit over here too. So I'm just going to. Okay. Can we have everyone take a seat, please? Great. Okay, I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Jenny Lefcourt from Freestyle Capital. She has spoken before, and she gives a killer talk about funding your startup. So I'm really excited to have her back. Please welcome Jenny.
Thank you. Very happy to be here today. So I think we have how long?
About 15 minutes, and let's leave questions to the end.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk to you all, and my goal is to just kind of demystify the funding process. So if you could just raise your hand, how many of you have already raised money? Okay. And how many of you plan to raise more money in the next 6 to 8 months? Okay. So I think this will be relevant. So I'm going to sort of go through. I know Jackie said questions at the end, but I may pause between slides and just make sure you're with me. So if you have a particular question on a slide and it doesn't make sense, I'll want to know it. So we'll sort of stay on topic, and at the end can be more of a free-for-all. So let's see. I think I have a fancy clicker. Okay, so just high level, I am a partner at Freestyle Capital. We are a seed stage fund based in San Francisco. And right now we're investing out of Fund 4, which is a $90 million fund. So we're typically leading what is currently called seed, which changes weekly. But right now that means that our entrepreneurs are raising about $3 million. We're typically leading with about $1.5 million check. So just like Series A have gotten pushed out a little bit later, so have seed. And the reason why most of our entrepreneurs are raising a little bit more is because A has gotten further. So you just have to make sure that you're prepared to get to that next milestone. And so at Freestyle, we invest in all kinds of stuff. We'll do B2C, B2B, marketplaces. Some of the companies that we've backed are Intercom, Digit, WAG, Patreon, Narvar, BetterApp, and then Airtable is one of my favorites that I'm currently obsessed with. That's in our portfolio. And just so you know, I will talk like a VC. I am a VC, but in my heart, I am a founder. I founded 3 different companies, and my partners were also founders. So we view ourselves a little bit different in that when we invest in our companies, we sort of just hustle alongside and a little bit live vicariously through our portfolio companies. So I'll talk to you today about being on both sides of the table. I feel like I really have a good understanding of how to work it. Happily married mom with 3 kids, and someone once made me put in that I love scuba diving with sharks, and I've not lost it. Okay, so the one thing I just want to tell you is that the climb is long and the climb is hard, and I feel like the media glamorizes being a startup CEO or startup founder, and the reality is it's grueling, it can be lonely, it's rough. And if it's not rough today, it will be rough tomorrow. If it was rough yesterday, you may be free, you may not. So it's just long and winding road. And funding is something that gets celebrated a lot, but the reality is it just gives you the right to give it a go and to start your climb. I basically am going to focus on 2 things, primarily the pitch. When I was you all, I was like, what are you guys looking for? What exactly do you need? So I'm going to try to dissect that for you all. And then I'm going to cover the process, but that's sort of at the end, and I'll go pretty quickly on that. So the one thing that I didn't get when I was a founder that I get now in spades, and I think if you understand it, you'll understand a lot more about the people that you're pitching, which is that as VCs, we're dealing with the power law of startups. And that's this idea that it is the ones that, do 10 times, 100 times that really return the funds, because we all have math, right? We have people who invest in us to return their capital at a particular multiple. And so what happens is that as a VC, you're constantly, every time you're making an investment, you want to believe that it's unlimited upside, right? You have to believe that, because if you don't, everything you do is risky. And as a founder, I remember thinking, like, this is much a sure thing. And there's no such thing as a sure thing. So as a VC, where you want to make your investments are ones where you can see, like, if it works, holy shit, this thing is incredibly valuable and there's no stopping it. And so that's often a problem for founders who talk about it's $2 billion market. Like, how could you not want this? And the problem is, it's like, 2 billion sounds really big, but when you get the percentage that you're going to get of it, in an upside scenario, it's not upside enough to deal, to mitigate the risk that we take on. So it's just one thing to think about, is that we're not looking at each different investment just as an investment in and of itself. We're looking at a portfolio effect, and we need everyone's shooting for this guy over here, and the rest you just have to kind of see as I guess, investments that you were hoping to be up there, but you never are trying to kind of, using a baseball metaphor, sort of get on first, right? You're looking for the home run each time, because those are the ones that produce. So understanding that is really key to knowing who you're pitching to. And pitching is just sales, right? You're selling to VCs who will hopefully fund your business. So to understand what we're looking for is, one, understanding our business, which I just kind of explained. And then two, understanding that the way then we look at it is to say, okay, one is I need to see that there is a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, meaning like, if successful, if you get past all the hurdles that face every startup, that will be an incredibly valuable company. And then we have to look and say, okay, is this the team? So if you get to a yes on question one, is this the team that is likely to get to the other side of the rainbow? So for a big idea, we're looking for a really big, lucrative market. Now, some VCs will say at the point where the market is big, it doesn't make sense. You want to go for markets that are not seen. The point is that it will be big. You have hypotheses, even if it's not big today, you have macro trends that point you to believe it will be big, and that it's a differentiated product and approach. And so it's not like, oh my God, this is a little bit better than that other company. It's like, it's 10x better. It's game changing for everyone in the ecosystem. That's what we're looking for. And then you always want to understand macro trends that explain the why now. This is something that is really interesting to me as a venture capitalist, is that it's not, if your business could have been done 5 years ago, and you just sit across and you look at me and you say, but no one ever did it, we're suspicious, right? We're like, there are too many smart people in this world. If that opportunity was there, someone would have done it. So it's always great to have these macro trends that show this could not have happened until now, and here's why. And so you want to sort of be a little bit ahead of the ball. You don't want to be too far ahead, and too out there on the bleeding edge. But at the same time, you want to be sort of ahead of the curve instead of behind it. And then on the team, you want to believe that the team that you're backing as a VC has some unfair advantage. There's always competition in the market, and we can talk a little bit more about what unfair advantage is, but it always exists. And I've had lots of founders say to me, I really don't have one. I really don't. It's like, you do if you dig deep down inside. So in my first company, Wedding Channel, I had no retail experience. I had no technology experience, nor did my co-founder. But just being women and understanding how the market worked was helpful, because all the competition were men who believed, like, let's go for greater margins. So if we work with the retailers, we only get 10 to 20%. But if we store Wedgwood and Crystal in our warehouse, we'll get 60%. So that's the better way to go. And we had to explain to all these male VCs, yeah, you're going to have 60% of nothing, because no one is going to register that way for another decade or two. These are traditional people. So now they're doing it, by the way, with a company called Zola. So it was just a matter of time. But back then, all those companies who were warehousing wedding product disappeared. And so what was our competitive advantage? We actually understood the behavior of the people in the market. So just know, like, competitive advantage can come, or unfair advantage can come in different sort of shapes and sizes. And I can almost guarantee that each of you have one. Okay, so a big mistake that founders make, and I'm going to say this with the greatest of intentions, because I am one, which is a lot of women make it more, and I know that I'm speaking to a room full of women, but this idea of having trouble selling the dream. And so I once had a woman who pitched me, and after digging into our business for an hour or two, I finally said, so if everything goes right, and everything goes the way you hope and dream it will be, what will you be? And she then explained to me what she would be. And And I said, well, why didn't you start out your pitch with, we're going to be the blank? And she said, well, I didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And that's a problem that sometimes, and I say sometimes, that our gender has. And the reality is a vision isn't overpromising. A vision is a vision. You see something. You see how the world is going to work. You see what needs to exist in the space that you're in. That is a vision. That's not a promise. That's a vision that has to be shared. And so you really have to do sort of what I call the 1-2 punch, which is that you have to sell this really big vision. And at the same time, you have to explain what you're doing tomorrow or what you did yesterday and connect the dots. But if you just talk about what you're doing right here, right now, it's probably not going to be interesting enough. And if you just sell the vision, but you have no idea of sort of your go-to-market, that's probably not going to be enough. So you really want to sort of combine the two, and I'll talk a little bit more about how you do that. Okay, so anatomy of a pitch deck. And this is one of my favorite things to do, is to say what you're going to be talking about and then what we're looking for, right? Once again, back to hopefully demystifying the process. So you want to explain who the founders and the team members are and the founding story. And what we're looking for is, what's your unfair advantage? What makes you special? Why do I believe you're going to do this, against all the odds that we saw on the first slide? And also, there's a lot that is just traits, attributes that you have as a founder. Like, are you going to stay the course? So you sometimes look at a founder and they went 6 months here, 6 months there, 8 months there, and you think, okay, I'm not sure if they're going to stick. Or someone who was at Microsoft for 10 years and you think, are you too risk averse? So we're reading the tea leaves because we don't have a lot of data in early stage, but just know that they're being read. And so you want to present as much as you can with the founding team that looks to really have what it takes to build a big company and to stick with it, because we all know how hard it is. And not every new founder knows how hard it is. The next thing is the problem. So you really want a big market, and you want to understand. Now, people say they'll put $100 billion is spent on e-commerce, and we're providing, inventory software. And it's like, okay, well, $100 billion is spent on e-commerce, but that's not your market size. So you really, of course, you want a large market, but you have to sort of balance that with not having a number that's silly and not that relevant to your business. So what I often talk about is, and you can do this in many different ways, but this combination of talking about, so we're selling this, or we're going after this, which is blank billion. And once we nail that, and this is why we're starting there, then it's easy pickings to go into this space, which is, gets you to the 30 billion or whatever it may be. I'm just making up numbers, but they have to make sense. So someone may say, since I'm selling them shoes, it makes sense that I could clean their homes next. And it's like, no, it doesn't. But if it says, hey, I'm starting with one SKU of a sneaker, and then assuming success, I'll be in a position to add on these 5 and these 20, and then, yeah, that's a super believable sort of ramp to a large market. And then you want to talk about competitive landscape. So this is not a competitive matrix where you talk about your features and other people's features. This is more positioning, where you want to explain what's happening in the market, and then what position you're going to own in that market and what position is already owned. And so you're more trying to understand, why does as we as VCs are trying to understand, why does this company need to exist? What hole is there in the market, and is it big and exciting enough? And then once again, back to the why now. What's happening in this market that creates either a problem or a great opportunity for a company to come in and change things? So when you talk about your solution, you're talking about your product and vision. You're talking about, if you have any traction, it's great to talk about traction. And if you have a business model, everyone wants to know, where's your revenue going to come from? What we're looking for is the product compelling? Once again, is it, oh, that's a little bit better than what else that audience could use? Or is that like, oh my God, that is dramatically different. That's a game changer for a business or a consumer. And then the business model, do I believe, right? Do I believe you can get a piece of that transaction? Or do I believe that you can charge that much? And then you talk about your next steps. Like, what are you going to do with this amount of capital you're raising? And by the way, when it's what are you going to do with the amount of capital you're raising, it's not, hey, this much for office rent and this much in legal fees. It's more, what milestones are you going to hit? Because as VCs, we're looking at saying, if I'm going to invest at this stage, I want to know that there'll be risk that will be eliminated before the next stage, because that's what increases valuation, right? So that's what makes you likely to raise your next round of financing and raise it at a better valuation for all. And then it depends if someone is sort of stage agnostic or not, but a lot of VCs who maybe do A and seed, or some who do A's and B's, they often are wondering, do I need to get in now or should I wait? You say you're going to land those 5 key deals. Great. Let me know once you do. And they know it will cost them more, but they'd rather pay up and have the sure thing than invest now. And other times people realize I have to invest now because this thing is going to take off and I need to be part of it now. Or people like us, I have to invest now because I can't invest in your Series A. That's not what we do. So before I move on, any questions? I think, do I go into... Hold on for 1 second. So I don't go into detail on these things. So if you guys have questions, as I just went through a bunch of information on these, you can absolutely ask them. Yes. Yeah, so her question is unfair advantage, could it be the knowledge of your industry? And it absolutely can, especially if knowledge of the industry gives you a competitive advantage, meaning you have contacts, like you can call the CMOs at every company that's relevant, or you have this insight to know how the world is changing and the rest of the world hasn't caught on yet. I will say, though, that sometimes founders coming in want to sort of, by the way, you don't actually explicitly say, hi, I'm Jenny and my unfair advantage is blank, but when you give your background, it comes out and you let us decide what your unfair advantage is. But what you don't want to do, and it is a mistake, and I may bring this up later, is you don't want to prove that you know your industry so well that you bore the VC with every last detail to prove it. It's great to know it and say, hey, because I worked at Apple in supply chain management for 3 years, I know the ins and outs of XYZ. That's wonderful. But when you start giving them the ins and outs of XYZ to prove it, that usually doesn't work as well.
Hi, Jenny. I'm Helen from Six Crickets. So when you talk about market size and people talk about, it has to be $1 billion, are you referring to the transaction size or are you referring to the revenue?
It's a great question, and it's one that when I was you, all I wanted was the answer, and no one will give it to me. And now that I'm one of the VCs, I'm like, oh, I get it now. So the answer is it's unknown. So what we're trying to believe is that at the end of the day, the company will be worth, ideally, worth multiple billions of dollars. So $1 billion plus. And so that's what it's worth. And so the question is, how do you get there? So it's less about the transaction size and more about the value of the company at the end of the day. And so how big does a market have to be to make it look like you're $1 billion company? And it's kind of hard. So I remember I was pitching a company, it was $4 billion in wedding photography or event photography. And then if you added videography, it got to $6 to $7 billion. And some VCs will say, I'm sorry, that's too small. So, okay, so what's big enough? And they're like, it's hard to say. And it's like, well, that's too small. Like there's some number that is okay. But the reality is it's a number of different factors. Like how big is the actual market? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? What percent? Is it a winner-take-all market, or are there going to be 10 players in it? Because that will impact how valuable I think the company can be. Are there network effects? Like how, so there's a number of different things that go into the algorithm to kind of come out with, do I think if successful, if this founder says they're going to do what they're going to do, that would be a really valuable company, and valuable being $1 billion plus company?
Like a little bit vague.
That's what I'm saying. It's incredibly vague because until you see all the different pieces, you don't know. So, is a $2 billion company, is that a big enough market? Not usually for me, but if they're starting with $2 billion, but then they have this whole product line that can get them bigger and bigger. And I really believe it is, they're uniquely positioned to get the other parts of the market by getting that first $2 billion, then it's different. So it is vague. That's what I'm saying. When I was you, I was like, no one will answer the question. It's almost like it can't be answered.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Layla. Thank you for your talk. So you were saying that there's always like macro trends to follow and competitors. Like in my case, there really isn't one. I'm in the tech ed space, and we have a platform that teaches kids math, science, and geography through cooking. So I've looked. There's a bunch of products in tech ed teaching math, teaching coding, like tons of. But there's nothing that teaches cooking through an app. And and the market in education is 107 billion was last year. In the U.S. alone, 23 billion. But the first response I get from investors like, oh, that's too small. This market is very small. There's no successful exits in tech ed. And I kind of have highlighted the handful of successful exits, but the reality is, there's not that many successful exits in tech ed yet, because this is going to be a longer journey. So what do I do? Do I give up in Silicon Valley, just go after social impact investors, or how do I turn this around?
That's such a good question, right? So if what you're selling isn't appealing to your audience, you probably do want to go someplace where it is. And it's not just a matter of convincing them. You then want to be aligned. And so not every company should be backed by Silicon Valley VC, right? We have because of people investing in us and the way we conduct our business, it actually may not be aligned with what you want. And if you are going to go slow, right, and it's going to take a while, then you want a really patient investor. And so I would say, I know that everyone wants venture capital, but not everyone should want venture capital. And there may be a way to do it without venture, with family offices, with people who are looking for a different time horizon, different multiple, or just getting out of this Bay Area, right, where people sort of have different attributes of how they invest or desires of how they invest. And then when you are talking about macro trends, there are kids teaching themselves more things online, right? You can talk about, I think Masterclass is doing well, and kids interested in cooking. So you have to kind of weave together a number of things that are kind of growing to sort of say this is the perfect storm for something like this. But I also would say if 10 investors have a similar reaction, some people think otherwise about VCs. I think VCs are mostly educated, study the history of business for a living, and so kind of have seen what works and what doesn't. Now, there's always going to be those that break the rules, and that's great. But to some extent, when you have 10 people saying something similar, you actually want to think about it yourself. Are they right? Because you don't want to just go and sell. You're investing with your life, and you want to make sure that you raise the right amount of capital and that you really believe. And so you don't want to just try to sell. You actually want to listen when you're in these meetings, and you may evolve based on the feedback that you get back.
I've actually done 12 pitches. So would you say 12 is enough, or do we listen to Airbnb who says, hey, we had to pitch 600 times before that? Like, what would you say is a good time
I would say
listen?
You have to listen to the feedback you're getting and decide, what do I believe? Do I think all 12 just can't see it, and I have to revise my pitch so that they can see it better? Or actually, the point that all 12 are making, I think they're kind of right, and maybe I'm better off doing it this way or that way. So my biggest advice in all these meetings is to get as much knowledge as you can. And don't just try to sell over the objections. Hear the objections and actually figure out what you believe. Because getting the capital, as you saw in that, the beginning of the long journey, that's just like the starting gun. And so you're going to be on this long journey. You could get a job anywhere doing anything. And so you want to make sure that you honestly believe that it's fruitful. And so listen to their objections and decide if you think like Airbnb, like they're just not getting it, then carry on and go after the next 500, But if you start to say, you know what, I think they're actually, like, they have a point, and I think maybe then we should do it a different way, or I should do things differently.
Hi, thanks for being here. So I did a seed round about 18 months ago, and I feel so blessed. The VCs that I have are just, I absolutely love all three of them, and I'm very, very lucky. we've got a go faster plan, we're calling it. I don't know, and that's basically to raise a bit more money at the end of this year to go faster. We know exactly what we want to spend the money on, but some of us, so my chairman and those guys are saying, right, this is a Series A, and then a lot of people are saying it's not big enough for a Series A, it's called a super seed, and all these funky terms that, and I don't really know what to call it, or if we are going for a Series A, we've actually got 50% of it promised, so I'm only looking for another 50%, and I want to go down the VC route for sure. But is it a Series A? Is it? Does it have to be at least a 2 million to qualify as a Series A? I'm not certain.
Yeah. So where I come out is I don't really care what they're called anymore, and so I would say decide how much capital you're raising, and just we're raising this much capital. And someone could say, well, is that a seed or no? It's like,
I'm calling it my Go Faster plan.
Well, that's a name that none of us will know.
No,
so it's just like begging. It's just begging for a conversation you don't need to have. But if it's 2 million, it's a seed or seed extension.
Right.
If it's 4 million,
it's about $500,000. So I suppose in dollars, you're probably looking about 800. So would that be a super seed or?
You're raising 800K?
We'd like to, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's definitely not an A. It's probably a seed extension.
Seed extension.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And so you guys can pick the names, and if it causes you any grief, just let go of the names. We're raising about 800K to go faster, to accelerate our plan.
Keep taking questions, or do you want to keep moving and then go back to questions?
I'm okay for, let's see, where are we on time? I'm okay for a couple minutes, and then I'll move back
Okay,
and just make
great.
sure I suck through it all.
Being here. It's great information. So we have our own thoughts on this side of the table, right, of, VC. And so from your side of the table, when do you think it's the right time for a company that has a big market to go VC?
I think when you can excite a VC in that the value of the company, assuming all, goes to plan, is interesting enough to provide the returns that a VC wants, meaning when the interests are aligned. And so if you really think your company could be the $1 billion plus company, then I think you should get VC funding.
Investors like private equity or investment bankers or just other money, what's the difference that VCs bring? I mean, I feel it brings validity to the concept because VCs are looking for the $1 billion ones. But what else should your journey with a VC, what should you expect?
Yeah, so I can't really comment on private equity because in my experience, private equity came later. And so in terms of early stage investing, I think that you have friends and family, you have family offices, and angels and venture, right? And so those are the ones that I know of. There may be other choices, maybe alone. And so I think that if I'm you all and I'm raising venture capital, you all deserve the hardest working capital there is. So you want people who, for a living, sort of wake up and are judged, and their day job is making you successful. And that they work, when you speak to other founders they've worked with, the founder would say, I couldn't have done it without this person. They had my back all the time. They provided guidance, wisdom, whatnot. And so you also can look at the makeup of your round. So sometimes you have like freestyle, we're sort of high conviction, low volume, meaning when I invest, I work heartily with my founders, and I make sure that I have ownership that corresponds to that effort. There are some VCs who write 150 here, 250K there, and they're like, let me know when you need me. If they have a great Rolodex that is relevant for you, you put one of them to combine with one of me, and that's fabulous for you. So it's not that every VC has to have the same model as freestyle. It's just that when you think about the value you can get from a VC, you want to make sure you maximize it. Thank you. I'll take one more, and then I'll come back, and then if there's time, I'll take more.
Thanks. So we're all aiming to build billion-dollar companies. What does that actually mean? I know it's not $1 billion in revenue. We're talking $1 billion in valuation. But how much revenue is that? Or is it growth versus profit? What does it take to be $1 billion company? How do you measure that?
Yeah, so I have to punt on that just because I feel like the way that I answered her, I can't do anything better than that. You have to kind of be able to look at the comps and believe that, wow, given the space that they're in, the revenue that they could take, and comparables of companies, like the company that did it in the 80s that served that need is worth $7 billion. So if we do it, given all these macro trends, and we do it for the now, and we steal that market from them, we could be worth $7 billion. So its part is sort of bottoms up, but part is also top down. And that's why when you talk about ed tech, it's hard because we VCs are pattern matching, right? And we look to comps. And when you have trouble finding a comp to say, if you're wildly successful, you'll look something like all these other companies that weren't worth that much. It's hard. And as a person who had to fundraise in the wedding space, this was something that was really challenging because there weren't a lot of huge winners in the wedding space. And so it's hard. And Zola, I know, faced that and they powered through. So back to your Airbnb, it can happen. And you can prove 12 wrong or 600 wrong. So you just have to decide what you think. But the reality is, people who told me about the wedding space, they were right. It was hard. What did you say? I did, but I will tell you the upside wasn't as high as we thought it could be when we papered it out. And I would say there have been probably more wedding companies that have not made it. So there's always the exception to the rule, and you have to decide if you know, that's for you to listen and then sort of figure out where your conviction is. So a common mistake is just not explaining the problem well. And so especially, I don't know how many of you have sort of women-based businesses versus just technology businesses. So I see this more with women where they are explaining, and I live this, a problem to a man, and he just doesn't understand it because he has not lived that life. And that's fine. And they appreciate it if you can explain it well, but just make sure that you do. Don't assume that everyone knows what you're about to pitch them. And that doesn't just matter for women-based businesses. It'd be all kinds of businesses, but especially the ones that sort of if your market is to women, don't expect a bunch of men to necessarily get it. So this is something I am a strong believer in, which is the flow and energy of the meeting matter a lot. So I believe heartily that deck or no deck, whether or not you take it out or you don't take it out, you want to have the pitch ingrained in your brain, and you can't get it ingrained unless you actually make a deck. So I've had founders say to me, I like to have a casual conversation. I'm like, I'd like you to pretend to have a casual conversation. And a great casual conversation is when you have thought long and hard about what are the key points I want to make, what's the best way to illustrate those points, what's the best data, the best analogy, the best story to tell, what order makes sense so that I get them, and practice it and practice it and practice it. And then you will have the most wonderful casual conversation or pitch you can imagine. And then the VC who feels the need to ask you a question that's off topic, you can answer it and come right back to where you were because you have it ingrained in your brain. So do it. It takes discipline. It's kind of hard, but it's never, ever fails. And you just get to this place where it's, I think of Mark Twain's letter, like I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. If you spend the time on your pitch deck, how am I going to say this? And you agonize in every meeting you have, you're like, that wasn't as crisp as I wanted to be. What if I tried this? Like, it's worth it because when someone pitches well, it makes a big difference. And when someone pitches really, really well, you don't even know you're being pitched to. And that's practice. So you want to be fluid, but you do not want to lose control of the meeting. So that goes back to when the VC asked you a question that may or may not be relevant, but it's definitely not in your flow. You have to answer it. You can't say that's coming at slide 12 because you'll lose your audience. But at the same time, if you get into reactive mode and you answer the question, then come back with another question, you don't gain control of the meeting. You'll walk out a half an hour, an hour later, and you will not have told them the key points they needed to know to be interested. And you rarely get back in. So be clear that your goal of the meeting is to get the next meeting. And so it's great to answer the questions, but then try to bring it back and do it in a way that feels natural versus now I'm going to come back to my pitch. It's like, yes, the sky is blue, but what's interesting is the grass is growing over here, and you just try to do it like it was normal, but you definitely want to do that. Bless you. So once again, staying high, the goal of the meeting is to get the next meeting. So what I mean by stay high is, and I see this in founders, not even new founders, like founders that we've invested in and I'm preparing them for their Series A or their Series B, is they have this desire to feel the need to say all these points because someone may ask this and someone may ask that. It's like, great, let them ask you. Pull up the appendix slide that has that question answered. But the last thing you want to do is just say a bunch of points so that they don't ask a question. Because then if someone wouldn't have asked that question, you just bored them. And so you need to stay high, keep them interested. When they drill down in an area, be thoughtful. Like you thought they may ask that question. That's great. Have the answer and then go back to staying high until they ask the next question. So it really works. And if you get too much into the weeds, you will likely lose your audience. When they want the weeds, when they want the details, that's when they're in due diligence and they're ready for it. It's a great time to give them every last detail. So you have to be authentic, right? You can't just be like, hi, I'm here to pitch you and stay in pitch mode. And so we as VCs are really looking for people who are intellectually honest, meaning they don't just want to sell you, they want to win. They are good at listening and they're high in conviction. So you have to walk that line where you can listen to people and say, gosh, I have to be honest, like I thought about it every which way and that idea never occurred to me. Have you seen that work before? That's great. If it's something that you have thought about and you know it doesn't apply to your market, then you should say, I was excited about that too. But what happens is when I ran the numbers, what I realized is blah, blah, blah. So you just have to be able to have a conversation. Do not get defensive. Don't just be in sell mode, be in listen and high conviction mode. And be open to ideas, but don't. I've seen entrepreneurs, believe it or not, in a meeting kind of change their mind. So, we believe that we should start the market over here. It's like, interesting. I would have expected you guys to go here for this reason. Oh, we could do that too. It's like, no, because you came in here, So you're really looking for entrepreneurs who are thoughtful. There is no right or wrong answer. You're just we as VCs are trying to get in your heads and understand the way that you think. So learn from every meeting. Not every meeting will produce a check, but every meeting should produce something of value, some new way of, I remember pitching people and they would reword. So what you're saying is blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, oh, that's a better way of saying it. And I'd write it down and I'd use it on the next VC. So every meeting is a learning opportunity. Most of these VCs have studied businesses, meet companies day in, day out, many times a day. Just see it as a business meeting and learn what you can. And if a check comes along with it, and it's more likely to with that attitude, by the way, great. And I talk about trying to enjoy the process. I really mean it. If I've had so many founders be like, I hate it. I was like, well, that's going to come through and you're probably not going to do it as well. So enjoy it. Just say, I'm meeting really cool people who have backed really cool companies. And you don't have to like everyone. You don't think you have to think the best of everyone, but you might as well get something from every meeting. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over the process. So I'm always asked, when should I raise? How much should I raise? Who should I raise from? And really high level, it's a matter of how much do you need to raise to get to the next milestone in your business? What's the next milestone? It's going to be different for every single one of you. Somehow you're trying to show that you have de-risked your business. So it may be that you need an MVP. It may be that you need to show that you got some demand. It may be that you sold one customer. I don't know what that is, but you want to decide at this point, things look a little bit better. How much time and how much money is it going to take me to get to that place? Buffer it, and that's probably what you should be raising. I am not a believer in a bunch of little raises. Like I call them snacks along the way. Raise 300, another 500, and then let's add on an 800. And it just isn't as disciplined, I believe, as saying I'm going to raise 500K. That will enable me to prove X, Y, and Z. And then your next raise, I'm going to raise 2 million because now I need to do these things and I'll be at this position. I just think it's harder, but it's better. Now, you may not have that luxury and then you may want 2 million and you get 500. That's for you to decide if that's enough for you to have a shot at it and pick it up along the way. So, there's always plan A and plan B, but that's how I would recommend it. And then depending on how much you're raising, we'll tell you who you're pitching to. If you're raising $3 million, probably not friends and family. You're raising 500K, probably not freestyle. So, understand a little bit about different people's appetites for different size checks. Okay, so now we still have time for Q&A.
Is it okay? I'm going to try and make my explanation of this question quick. So you talked a lot about wanting people to do something new, right? You want the companies to come in and do something completely new that hasn't been done before. But for example, my company, younger, cooler, Rent the Runway with better customer service. So Rent the Runway already exists, and that's feedback we get a good amount of time, but we think we're doing it differently. How do you face that kind of thing when you want someone to be doing something new? Does that make sense? Because there is Uber and Lyft, obviously.
Totally. And so, yeah, I don't mean to say you have to do something new. I just mean to say it has to be significantly better.
Okay.
And better for whatever audience you're targeting. So you may say Rent the Runway is amazing for this audience, but here's where it breaks. And this is what we're going to do. Now, I had someone pitch me Rent the Runway, but items were on average $20 more. So it's like a little more luxury. And I'm like, that's just not enough. Like, I don't think you know how hard it is for Rent the Runway. I mean, they're the largest dry cleaner in the United States, right? Their operations are insane. If that's a big market to go $20 up on a label, they would do that. They could do that. Building their operations is hard. So you want to make sure that the difference that you're claiming is real, right? And if it is, that's great. And it could be just like Rent the Runway worked for this group, we're doing it for this group. Or it could be they're not making people happy in this way, and we are, but that difference has to be significant and not something Rent the Runway could fix in an hour.
Okay, awesome. That was a great answer. Thank you.
Hi, Jenny. Amy Jarzynski from Kiss and
Okay,
Tell.
sorry.
We're a global wedding and group travel booking platform.
Sorry.
I know the uphill battle of fundraising in the wedding space, and no, I just kind of wanted to pick your brain of some of the biggest challenges that you've had in the space in the recent years, because I also know that it's a bit saturated with a lot of like newlyweds creating, startups based on their dissatisfaction with, say, the Nod or Wedding Channel, Wedding Wire. And what are some of the things that strategies you've utilized to overcome?
You're not going to like my strategy because I basically just haven't invested in anything weddings. And since I joined Freestyle. Now, part of that is because I got labeled wedding woman, and I wasn't a wedding woman. I just happened to have done 2 wedding companies. So I'm a business person. So I sort of, part was for brand, but then the reality is part is I know how hard it is. It's almost like I have the scar tissue. And so people say, but you did well. It's like, yeah, but there's, it's not the dinosaur, the tip of that dinosaur I was showing well. So, which is what I'm going for. So I would just say, find people who have had success in weddings, right? I would go to the Zola investors because they're loving life right now.
Right, yeah, no, most of them are seeing us as potentially too competitive. So that was one of my things. I don't want to take everyone else's time.
Got it. Well, then go, if it's travel, go to people who invest in travel and talk about, and sometimes the thing about weddings is that you are getting this potential lifetime value of a customer that is beginning their travel career. So you just have to know your audience and think, okay, who won't vomit on the wedding space and why? Yeah.
And I think you do have that reputation because I met Mike Maples back in the fall and he said, she knows a lot about weddings.
Yeah, I am like the wedding. Everything weddings now comes to me. There are other people too. Yeah.
Hi, Jenny. Jenny Fielding speaks very highly of you.
I love her.
My question to you is do you see that there's ever a sweet spot between in terms of the quantity of funds or relationships that you want to manage in a seed round, like a proper seed round, meaning there's a lead. How many other parties do we really want in there?
So, I mean, the perfect makeup of a seed round is always different, but I'm a believer that you want at least one who is leading and has enough skin in the game to care. So, I love Excel. Excel's a great firm, but if they were your lead in the seed, I can tell you they just won't care enough, right? Because that is too small of a check. So whoever is your lead, as long as it's a significant check for them and they're going to work hard, I think that's great. If you can fit 2 of those in, even better, right? Because the more help, the better. And then sprinkling it around with other people who have the right contacts or have always had your back or are helpful in some other regard. And that could be made up of 3 more or 15 more. It almost doesn't matter.
Hi, Jenny. This is Shilpi. I have a B2B marketing analytics business. The question I have is we did the seed round, $1 million in 2013, and since then we have been growing organically. So now we are in $3 to $5 million revenue. The market is complex and it's crowded. So finding the right investor, like I have a list of investors who have invested in the very similar companies, but they have exited now. Do you think that is the right way to start? Or if there is still invested in your competitor, it is just too close a call? Or how should we pick the right investor?
Yeah, so if a VC is no longer in the company and they had a good exit, they're great. That's a perfect door to knock on because everyone's pattern matching. And so if you take a great exit that they had and they said, oh my God, it's like that company, but for this, and they're not currently involved or they've exited a lot. Like if the company went public and most of their stock is sold, perfect pickings. If in their current portfolio are competitive companies, you don't want them, and I don't think they're going to invest in you. And so showing up with your deck and showing them your secret sauce, I wouldn't recommend.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
And we have a medical fitness device that has a mobile coaching application, and the similarities come up. And okay, that's like Peloton, but it's for rehab.
Right.
And some VCs love that story, and they like to kind of immediately get to it. Okay, Peloton for rehab, they get it. And then other VCs are like, don't even remotely go there because you have hardware. It's going to cost $400 million. Like, scares the crud out of them. So I'm curious I saw your, be careful who you kind of compare yourself to. Very different, but there are some similarities.
Yeah, it's really hard, those analogies, because sometimes they can be super helpful and sometimes they just kind of are detrimental. And sometimes VCs like to be the smartest person in the room, and you say, we're like Open Table for this. And they say, well, you're not, because Open Table did blah, 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 and you're not. And you're like, well, I didn't mean it. We're exactly like. And so I would say I wouldn't use it if you don't need to turn the lights on, and then you kind of can figure out maybe how you do it. Like, rather than it being in your deck, we're the Peloton of this. It's more like when you're talking and they say, well, we have concerns about the hardware. It's like, I understand that, but like Peloton, when the initial investment is sort of really small in comparison to the monthly subscription fees, it's a great model. So you more want to use an analogy if you have to turn the lights on. But if you don't, I would say don't come out of the gate with one. And then two, I would say use it to show success and in sort of in a small way versus an analogy up here. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I understand. I mean, welcome to VCs. Like half the people will hate something, half the people will love something. And so it's just like you're just kind of figuring it out.
Hi, Jenny. I'm Perry Nelson, the founder of Nicely Noted. So I've been in the market for like 6 years with a profitable product, and I'm going out to raise. And as I've started to talk to sort of people in my network, so I'm sort of starting with just soft conversations versus asking. I thought I was going to raise like a $1 million seed and kind of grow this really much bigger platform. I'm hearing that my current numbers are great, and I should just raise like a littler round, like a $250,000 round, and sort of see what I can do over the next year to grow traction, to get sort of, I guess, to sort of prove even further before I raise a bigger round. I'm curious, like, I just wonder if that's female-driven advice, right? Like, sort of go smaller versus going bigger. Yeah. And sort of, what's your take there?
So my take is, I think that it may be a gender-related issue, and I hate to say it, but I think it's true. And I think, being our gender, we have to figure out what we think. And so the thought of taking on venture capital for $250, I feel like I'm in no man's land. Now, I know nothing about your business, and that may be the exact amount you need to dip your toe in the water to believe that you should raise $1 million. But if you see something and you're like, I have a profitable business, but look, if I accelerate in these ways, invest in this thing can go like this, and that is a massive business, then go for it. And don't even have those conversations. Yeah.
Myself in like this weird no man's land of that tiny raise of like where
it feels like it's no man's land. I mean, I love it. If you can bootstrap your business, I think that's fantastic. I would do that over taking VC capital all day long if you can. And if you can't, I would make sure that you have enough funding to really go for it. But the combination, like at 250, I feel like, I don't know enough about your business, but my gut is with your gut. Oh, hey.
She's awesome.
You let men in? I didn't know men were allowed.
How do you typically invest? Hold on a second. I got some questions. How much you typically invest?
I'm typically investing about 1.5 million, and the entrepreneurs are raising about 3 million.
Got it. Like to hold on a second there, Captain. Hold on. This is the host para. Okay, hold on. How many deals do you do a year?
I'm going to go with her question.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to you.
Overruled. Okay. Here we go. I just wanted to get some context.
I'm going to go with the woman, and then I'll come back to the man.
Okay, well, I actually wanted to ask.
There is actually only one male in the room.
Exactly. I feel like the power's on my side. Go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to ask about one question about one of your investments, actually. So I see that you invested in Patreon, which is actually my space. And I'm curious because there's been 4 rounds within the last 4 years that seem to be quite significant. Why are you raising, or why did you invest in them, and why such significant numbers within less than a year's time?
So, I mean, it may seem like this doesn't make sense to you, but the more successful you are, the more you have the opportunity to raise capital and go big, right? And believe that if you accelerate, that you can get bigger and faster and better and not give competitors a shot. And so not everyone believes that. Some people may think you're overcapitalizing. But when you have the opportunity to raise capital and raise it at good valuations, you can attract top talent. You can add on teams. You can go after new opportunities. And you can get there sometimes faster and better than others that way. So every business is different.
And make a ton of mistakes.
And make a lot of mistakes and burn through a lot of capital. So, I mean, you have to do it wisely. So I think Jason's right. You can overcapitalize a business and it can literally bring you down. In Patreon's case, I think Jack is incredible. And I think he is doing beautifully. And so I think there's just a matter sometimes